Okay, testing. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. Yeah. I'm just gonna be watching some conspiracy theories. Already we have some ads. Jeez. Yeah.
Can you make more sponge?
Okay, I also want to count how many ads I'm gonna see while live streaming. Okay. Today I'm gonna be watching Alex Bale, the SpongeBob conspiracy compilation with a new, what is it? Mini theories? Okay. Okay, let's watch. Yeah, I'm also gonna check how many ads are gonna be in this video. Okay.
SpongeBob theories.
Where's the new SpongeBob
What is the
conspiracy?
next SpongeBob
Alex,
theory?
please
Can
make
you
more
do
SpongeBob.
More SpongeBob.
There's no SpongeBob.
Alright, I get it. Listen, I'm done making SpongeBob theories. I already gave you guys 8 big ones. And then I made a whole web series about not wanting to be the SpongeBob guy. I'm done, okay? But since we're wrapping up this SpongeBob chapter of my channel, and since I'm basically at 1 million subscribers, here's what I'll do as a
congratulations,
final
bro.
send-off just for you SpongeBob theory fans. This video is a
eating
compilation of my 8
some
previous
delicious
SpongeBob conspiracies with no sponsorships, no film interruptions, no whining about not wanting to be the SpongeBob guy, except for the whining that I just did, and a bunch of brand new, never-before-seen content. These theories have new evidence that's been discovered, some corrections and responding to comments I've gotten, new ideas and directions for old theories, and, best of all, 8 completely new, never-before-seen mini SpongeBob theories.
Let's go.
I'll be sprinkling these new mini theories in after each of the main theories, and I'll also be ending all of my old theories with some thoughts on how I think they hold up today. And hey, after this, I'm still going to be making theories about other non-SpongeBob related topics, so make sure you subscribe to catch those. Let's begin this one final SpongeBob video with the very first SpongeBob theory I ever made, just for you very passionate SpongeBob theory fans that have changed my life. Thank you for everything. I hope you enjoy.
Squilliam Fancy Son! Squilliam Fancy Son! Squilliam Fancy Son!
Squilliam Fancy Son III is Squidward's rival from high school band class.
So, I just took my private yacht across my private lake to my private heliport.
He's more wealthy, popular, and talented than Squidward, and he always rubs it in his face.
That's right. I'm living your dreams, Squidward. Oh, just succeeding in everything you failed in.
But I intend to prove that he's a fraud, using his wealth to make himself seem more popular and talented than he actually is. He goes to ridiculously extreme and expensive lengths to humiliate Squidward and show his superiority, and I'm gonna prove it. Evidence number 1, the pet hospital. We first meet Squilliam in Season 2, Episode 15, Band Geeks. The episode opens with Squidward playing the clarinet and getting a knock on the door.
Yeah, we're with the pet hospital down the street, and I understand you have a dying animal on the premises.
Immediately after, Squidward gets a call from Squilliam.
Hello, you've reached the house of unrecognized talent. Please start after the... Sounds as though you've got a dying animal to attend to, eh, old chum?
I believe that not only was Squilliam spying on Squidward to know when he was playing his clarinet, but he also hired the doctor to come and embarrass Squidward.
Yeah, we're with the pet hospital down the street. Pet hospital down the street.
We have never seen a pet hospital in Bikini Bottom. We've only ever seen just the regular Bikini Bottom hospital. We've seen this purple doctorfish before, but once again, he's never worked at a pet hospital. We've only ever seen him at the regular general hospital.
Well, Mr. SquarePants, it seems you have the suds. Are you ready for your treatment?
Then there's this green fish behind him, and we've only ever seen him as one of the many identical paramedics that work at the Bikini Bottom Hospital. We even see him at the end of the episode to take Squilliam away after fainting. So it is very likely that Squilliam hired these two and told them to pretend like they're from a pet hospital just to humiliate Squidward. Hey, it's me from the future! So this is an obvious one that I got tons of comments about. There is a pet hospital, and this doctor did do a pet checkup, and I was a teenage Gary. Still, I think the way Squilliam immediately calls and mentions the dying animal strongly implies he sent the doctor to mess with Squidward. Also, I don't have like a ton to add to this theory just because they haven't really released any new Squilliam lore, but I've still got a few things to say, and the next theories will have a lot more, I promise. But this is just the start of Squilliam's elaborate lies. Evidence number 2, the Bubble Bowl. In the same episode, Squilliam also says,
I'm the leader of a big fancy band now, and we're supposed to play the Bubble Bowl next week. The problem is, I'm busy next week and can't make it, so I was hoping you and your band could cover for us.
But we've never seen Squilliam's band before, and despite claiming he's too busy to make it to the Bubble Bowl, he still shows up at the end to watch Squidward's band. So both his excuse and probably his band were made up to pressure Squidward into humiliating himself at the Bubble Bowl.
Squilliam, you lying, deceiving bastard! I didn't even realize that! Who is that handsome young devil? Hey, I know this guy!
Evidence number 3, Squilliam's friends. In Season 3, Episode 8, Squilliam returns. Squidward leaves for work and conveniently bumps into Squilliam and all of his fancy friends, despite Squilliam not seeming like the kind of guy that would come near the Krusty Krab. He and his friends make fun of Squidward for working as a cashier.
Hold it! Don't tell me! You're a cashier!
Don't lie. Lying always makes it worse.
But I believe that this encounter was planned out by Squilliam in advance, and he hired all of those people to pretend to be his friends. Take a look at Squilliam's friends. They're all nicely dressed, you kind of get the sense that they're fancy, high-status members of Bikini Bottom, but they aren't. This is more like what the fancy rich people in Bikini Bottom look like. These are just some regular Bikini Bottom citizens. Most of them usually don't even wear nice clothes like this. And most of them are regulars at the Krusty Krab and would already know Squidward as the cashier.
My patty doesn't have enough slime!
These are not the type of people Squilliam would hang out with. I mean, why would Squilliam be hanging out with one of Pearl's teenage friends? You know, some people pointed out that maybe there's another reason for this, but I'm not gonna get into that.
Squilliam, you have some explaining to do. Hi, I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC. Why don't you have a seat right there?
At the end of the episode, Squilliam even admits to his whole life being fake.
I made everything up about my life. I have no yachts, jets, or anything. I was only trying to impress you.
And then, of course, he quickly says he's just kidding.
Is that true?
Of course not! I'm filthy stinking rich!
But was he kidding? I mean, obviously he's rich, but is there a nugget of truth in there? Evidence number 4, the statue. In Season 7, Episode 6, Squidward has to pick up trash for community service, and Squilliam once again conveniently bumps into him and reveals he's cleaned up so much trash that the city actually built a statue of him.
Maybe if you clean up Bikini Bottom, they'll build a statue of you. Oh wait! They've already built one. Of me! I cleaned up all of Bikini Bottom in only 1 week.
Hello, it's me, I'm interrupting. So a lot of people thought this statue was actually supposed to be of Squidward because there's no unibrow, but we can actually faintly see it right there.
Oh wait! They've already built one. Of me!
I believe that once again, this encounter was staged by Squilliam, and he actually paid to get that statue built. As Squilliam tells Squidward about the statue, a female fish admires it and says,
"Bless you, Squilliam Fancy Sim. Bless you."
But if you remember, this is one of those friends Squilliam likely paid, making her whole comment feel very fake. By the end of the episode, Squilliam's statue gets destroyed. A police officer approaches and they have this exchange.
This is your statue?
It was.
Squilliam admits that it's his statue, not the city's. And why else would the officer give him specifically a ticket if it was city property? Evidence number 5. The concert. In Season 6, Episode 17, Squidward watches Squilliam play the clarinet at a big fancy concert. He receives a standing ovation, causing Squidward to leave angrily. But I believe this entire concert is a scam. Not only has the audience been paid to cheer, but Squilliam never even touches his instrument. Once again, many of the audience members were part of Squilliam's quote-unquote friends, but we also never actually see Squilliam play the clarinet. The episode opens right after he's finished his performance with the audience cheering, and one member of the audience says,
"He's such a great musician. He doesn't even have to touch an instrument to be brilliant."
Maybe the real reason Squidward leaves so angrily is because the audience cheered for Squilliam even though he never even touched his clarinet. Maybe Squilliam is just as bad as Squidward at the clarinet and he's trying to hide it. Hey, before we get into the next evidence, here's a quick new thought I had. In this video, I'm claiming Squilliam is a fraud in terms of his popularity and his talent, but he clearly is actually very rich. But how? Well, I think the answer is in his name, Squilliam Fancyson III. He was obviously just born into a rich family and was given everything his whole life. Just another interesting layer to the character. Squilliam has gone to some pretty extreme lengths just to humiliate Squidward, but nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to what he does next. Evidence number 6. The Music College. In the same episode, after Squidward leaves the concert, he's approached by the headmistress of the Bikini Bottom prestigious music college.
Aren't you the esteemed Squilliam Fancyson III, who we all came here to see perform tonight?
She mistakes him for Squilliam and offers him a position as a professor. Squidward pretends to be Squilliam and teaches a class, only for the police to burst in and arrest him, all while he's being filmed on live TV. And I believe that this is Squilliam's most elaborate and most expensive scheme to destroy Squidward both publicly and legally. This encounter where Squidward gets offered a job is already suspiciously convenient, but listen closely to their exchange.
I'm Squilliam Fancyson.
But didn't you just say a minute ago that your name was Squidward Q Tentacles?
It is. No, I didn't.
Well, that's a relief. I mean, what kind of a moron would go to their worst enemy's music recital?
What kind of moron would go to their own enemy's music recital?
How does she know? How does she know? True. How does she know? Yeah. You're onto something, my guy.
How does she know that Squidward and Squilliam are enemies? If she knew who Squidward was, then why didn't she recognize him? Why would she mistake him for Squilliam? This feels way too much like she was hired by Squilliam to set a trap for Squidward. And if that's not enough, the headmistress's associate is literally just a guy from the paid audience wearing a disguise. He just threw on some glasses to seem smart. Squilliam knew that Squidward couldn't resist the opportunity to teach a music class, even if it meant breaking the law.
My very own music class.
Then we get to the Bikini Bottom prestigious music college, and right off the bat, there's something very fishy about this place. The building itself is very green and grimy and has a very cheap metal look. Nothing about this says prestigious except for the big sign on top, which feels like the only new thing about this building. I think there is a very good chance that Squilliam just bought some old warehouse, then stuck a sign and some paint on it to disguise it as a college. I mean, look at these other schools in Bikini Bottom. They all have a very nice structure and a paint job, but this prestigious music college looks like a dumpster. Going into the classroom, not only does it have another one of Squilliam's friends, but if this is such a prestigious college, how did SpongeBob and Patrick get in here?
Would you two numbskulls mind telling me what you're doing in music class anyway?
Sure. Patrick's New Year's resolution was to learn to play an instrument.
They say it was their New Year's resolution to take a music class, but you'd think it'd be harder for them to get into an esteemed music school if they just decided to go to it on a whim. Seems like they're just letting in anyone to sell this ruse. Then, both the police, Squilliam and the headmistress, and a live news broadcast show up at the same time to arrest Squidward for impersonating Squilliam. If the extremely coincidental fact that all of these people suddenly showed up at the same time isn't enough for you to believe that Squilliam set it all up, I've got something that's going to blow your mind. Squilliam literally has the police working for him.
Squidward Q Tentacles, I'm placing you under arrest for impersonating a genius.
If that doesn't sound like he's been paid off, I don't know what does. The lengths that Squilliam goes to humiliate Squidward are insane. He literally builds statues and entire buildings just to make Squidward feel inferior. But why? Why would anyone go so far to embarrass an old high school band classmate? What happened between them? What could have caused this extreme level of dedication? Well, unfortunately, we never really get much information on their past. I've spent hours reading through the SpongeBob Wikipedia and looking at old episodes, and there really just isn't any clues that would explain their weird relationship. I guess we can't solve everything, but either way, that's my theory. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you next time.
Oh.
Wait a second.
Oh.
Wait a second. Season 6, Episode 5, Slide Whistle Stooges. Just a normal episode where SpongeBob and Patrick annoy Squidward. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Except I have one question about this episode. Why does Squidward have Squilliam's robe? That is clearly not the purple robe he usually wears. That is Squilliam Fancyson III's robe. Why would Squidward have this?
Are we about to... Is he about to say what I think he's about to...
Unless they were more than just classmates. Could they have once been dating?
Hey, yo! I mean, wait. He's a grown man that likes the clarinet, classical art, classical music, and smooth jazz. Octopi are bisexual?
No way. That's not possible. There's no evidence to support that. Right?
Don't be intimidated, Squidward. Try to imagine him in his underwear. Oh no, he's hot!
No, it can't be.
I mean, what kind of a moron would go to their worst enemy's music recital?
It's been right in front of us this whole time.
Our sources last saw Evil harassing teenagers up at Makeout Reef.
Makeout Reef. Good times, good times.
Voted most likely to suck eggs in high school.
Holy s***!
Alex Bale does it again. He does it again. He always has this way of being like, of the video obviously being a stretch, but he'll give you that one tidbit of it, the aha moment. He does it every time. He does it every time.
Also, he calls him Squiddy.
Squiddy?
That kind of sounds like a pet name for an ex, right? I don't know. Obviously, I didn't have a ton to add to this theory, since there hasn't really been any new Squilliam episodes, but I have a lot more to say in the other theories, I promise.
Come on, man. So that's 3. 3 ads. Man,
so before we get to the first official new mini theory, I'm gonna end each of my old theories with a few thoughts on how I think they hold up and where I think they rank among the others. I think I'd probably rank this as my worst SpongeBob theory, even though I still think it's pretty plausible. It's just got a lot of issues with it. You can probably tell it's my first attempt at an actual theory, with some obvious things I got wrong, and the fact that a lot of the evidence relies on the continuity of very common background characters, which are obviously used very interchangeably in this show with no rhyme or reason. I still think there's some really good evidence here, like the design of the college, or the way this lady clearly knows more about Squidward than she's letting on. But also, you know, when you compare it to my later theories, it's kind of just a very basic, simple concept. I'm just claiming the asshole character is an even bigger asshole than you thought. It's really not that interesting or surprising. Oh well, we can only go up from here. Let's begin my first new mini theory.
Imagination.
So here's a question I've been asked from the very start of making these SpongeBob theories. How is there fire underwater? It's probably one of the most obvious contradictions in this show, and the creators will usually go out of their way to draw attention to the fact that it doesn't make any sense.
At least it's warm around the fire.
Hey, if we're underwater, how could there be a...
Whoever sent this obviously has no idea about the physical limitations of life underwater. Might as well throw these in the fire.
So finally, I will give the people my answer to this infamous, age-old question: how is there fire underwater? It's just a cartoon. I'm not kidding, that's actually my answer. SpongeBob is not the real world. It's a cartoon. It has its own cartoon logic where absurd things like fire being underwater can happen. But that doesn't mean there's nothing here to theorize about. Just because it's cartoon logic doesn't mean it's not still logic. If you pay close attention, you can see that there is a consistent internal logic and rules to how this cartoon world really works. And I think how SpongeBob cartoon logic works is best explained in the Season 3 episode, Idiot Box. In this episode, SpongeBob and Patrick spend the day playing inside of a box, but Squidward keeps hearing impossible sound effects coming from it.
SpongeBob?
And how are they creating these sound effects?
How are you two making those noises?
Imagination.
With their imagination. And this is key to understanding how the SpongeBob world really works. This episode tells us that anything that is imagined in SpongeBob can physically come to life. We can see this imagination rule in every single episode of the show. The most obvious example of this is when a character is thinking and a thought bubble appears above their head. But in SpongeBob, these thought bubbles are real physical things. Other characters can see and physically interact with them.
Wait, hold on! My pen is out of ink. Plankton! You'll never get me formula, not even in a flashback.
Because things imagined in SpongeBob come to life. And this goes far beyond just thought bubbles. It explains how characters are constantly getting new props and costumes out of nowhere. Where did SpongeBob suddenly get this hat and sign? Where did he get this glove or all of these costumes that instantly appear and disappear? It's because SpongeBob is imagining all of these props. This can be used to explain almost every single absurd gag in this show.
Wait, Patrick, you're supposed to let me win, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Patrick is imagining himself getting beat up here.
Said it's gonna be a good one, just wait and see.
SpongeBob is imagining the sun talking to him and burning his bedroom. And SpongeBob and Patrick are imagining that fire is able to exist underwater. And if you still don't believe me, look what happens when Patrick questions the logic behind the fire.
Hey, if we're underwater, how could there be a...
The moment they start doubting the logic of the fire, it disappears because they're no longer able to imagine it. This rule also seems to be limited by how imaginative each character is. Squidward, who never even got the idiot box to work, rarely ever manifests any imaginations, while SpongeBob, arguably the most imaginative character in the show, has created living characters like Doodle Bob and Bubble Buddy using his imagination, both of which have ended up continually reappearing throughout the entire show. Bubble Buddy even went on to create an entire bubble town full of bubble citizens, all stemming from SpongeBob's imagination. This theory also explains why Mrs. Puff gets trapped in so many delusions. They are literally manifesting around her because of her imagination. Okay, but what's the point of explaining all of this? Even if you didn't know the exact mechanics of it, you probably already understood that random stuff can just appear and disappear in a cartoon. I'm not really telling you anything groundbreaking, but once you fully understand this idea, it adds a whole new context to so many things in this show. One of the most interesting being how dreams seem to affect the world, specifically SpongeBob's dreams. In Season 1 Sleepy Time, SpongeBob dreams about finally getting his license, but then he crashes and Mrs. Puff takes his license away. And this is exactly what happens later in the Season 2 episode, No Free Rides. Mrs. Puff gives him a license, instantly regrets it, and after SpongeBob crashes his car, Mrs. Puff takes his license away. So, did SpongeBob's dream predict this event? Or did his imagination literally cause it to happen? Okay, you're not convinced yet? Don't worry. This is far from the only instance of this happening. In Season 2 Procrastination, SpongeBob dreams about his pineapple burning down, which happens later in Season 9 Gary's New Toy. In Season 5 Roller Cowards, he dreams about crashing on a Glove World roller coaster. And then it happens in Season 10 Don't Wake Patrick. Even dreams we don't see come true. In Squids on a Bus, Squidward becomes a bus driver for the day, and SpongeBob says this.
I've always dreamed one day I'd board a bus and see you driving it.
Now, I already know what you're gonna say. SpongeBob's a very long-running show. A lot of these basic plots were bound to happen eventually, right? You know, it's like how The Simpsons can predict the future. But in Season 4's Fear of Krabby Patties, SpongeBob dreams about everyone in the Krusty Krab turning into giant killer Krabby Patties. That is a very weird and specific plot, and yet that's still exactly what happens 7 seasons later in Krabby Patty Creature Feature, when Mr. Krabs feeds people experimental Krabby Patties and turns everyone into giant mutant Krabby Patty monsters that try to hunt SpongeBob down. It seems like all of SpongeBob's dreams eventually manifest into real life because of the unlimited power of his imagination. Okay, that's all pretty interesting, right? But you want to know something really crazy? While researching this theory, I discovered something insane. Honestly, it may be one of the craziest discoveries I've ever found in this show. Are you ready? In the Season 6 special, Truth or Square, all of the characters get trapped inside of the massive ventilation system beneath the Krusty Krab.
There's an entire network of tunnels and air ducts underground.
At a certain point, Mr. Krabs gets separated from the group.
A crossroads. I'll go this way, and SpongeBob, you lead him down that way.
SpongeBob then takes a break to tell the story of when Mr. Krabs told him the Krabby Patty secret formula.
This reminds me of the time Mr. Krabs confided in me the Krabby Patty recipe. Mr. Krabs called me into his office.
And then something really strange happens. After the story, we cut back to the group, and Mr. Krabs is somehow back with them after previously being separated. I'm serious. There's no scene of them being reunited. He's just gone and then back somehow, and it's never explained in this episode. I mean, what was even the point of wasting time and money animating them split up if they were just gonna immediately bring Mr. Krabs back without any explanation?
I'll go this way, and SpongeBob, you lead him down that way.
You could literally remove the scene of Mr. Krabs separating from them, and the episode would make total sense. But wait a second. Look at how SpongeBob's story ends.
You can never tell another living soul. Wait, hold on! Plankton! You'll never get me formula, not even in a flashback. SpongeBob.
Imaginary Mr. Krabs from inside of the thought bubble grabs Plankton and throws him down a vent. And when we cut back, Mr. Krabs is suddenly back sitting with the group. The obvious explanation is that this isn't the real Mr. Krabs. This is still the imaginary Krabs from SpongeBob's story who came to life. And the real Mr. Krabs is still somewhere lost inside of the Krusty Krab vents, and they never switched back. The Mr. Krabs they escape with is not the real Mr. Krabs. And every time we see Mr. Krabs after this Season 6 episode, he's actually a fake imaginary doppelganger. And the real one is still trapped beneath the Krusty Krab somewhere. It's the reason why Mr. Krabs in later seasons has become such a one-dimensional character, going from someone who was cheap but still genuinely cared about his employees and family to a one-note cartoon villain. It's because he actually was replaced by a flat imaginary imitation of the original. And I know what you're gonna say, there's no way SpongeBob would imagine him to be that way. Well, think again.
Show me what you got.
Look at me. I'm Mr. Krabs. I love money. Every night I tuck me wallet in and tell it a bedtime story. Ooh, what's that you say? Me daughter Pearl needs an operation? I'll do it myself and save a nickel.
That'll do, SpongeBob.
And that is the imagination theory. 7 more mini theories left. Woo!
This is number 4.
Reaches beyond the front lines.
The number 4 ads. Jeez, I wonder how many ads are going to be on this
SpongeBob
thing.
is not what you think it is. There is a secret group of puppet masters who are always watching the citizens of Bikini Bottom and pulling the strings. Hidden within Bikini Bottom are spies that keep an eye on the characters and make sure everything goes to plan. This is a conspiracy that will fundamentally change the way you look at the show SpongeBob SquarePants, and I believe it's all actually intended by the creators, and I'm gonna prove it. This is the television theory. To start this theory, we have to go back to the very beginning of the very first episode of SpongeBob SquarePants.
Ah, the sea. So fascinating. So wonderful. Here we see Bikini Bottom, teeming with life. home of one of my favorite creatures, SpongeBob SquarePants. Yes, of course he lives in a pineapple, you silly.
So let me ask you a question. Who's speaking in this clip? Well, obviously that's just the narrator. We hear his voice many times throughout the show.
Goo Lagoon. A stinky mud puddle for you and me. The Krusty Krab. Through these doors pass all the many kinds of undersea life.
Pop's boating school, where diligent students learn the rules of the road.
But who exactly is the narrator? Well, he's just the narrator, right? We're not supposed to think about who he is or why we're hearing him. Lots of shows have narrator framing devices we're not supposed to think about.
Caillou was amazed that Mommy had made a rainbow, just like in the picture.
But there's something different about this narrator. He sounds a lot like he's narrating a nature documentary.
The ocean. From above, a simple blanket of water. But below, a complex world full of color, life, and wonder.
The sea. So fascinating. So wonderful. Here we see Bikini Bottom, teeming with life.
What if I told you that he's not just some random disembodied voice? He's an actual character in this universe.
Here we are again at the Bikini Bottom Boating School. Today is once again the day of SpongeBob's boating school exam, but more importantly, this is the last test for the year. And if SpongeBob does not pass this one, it means another whole year of boating school!
SpongeBob literally crashes into the fourth wall, and we actually get to see the narrator and the camera he's been filming with. The show SpongeBob SquarePants is not just a cartoon. Everything we see is a part of a nature documentary television show being filmed by scuba divers. Hey, Alex from the future here. It is kind of weird that the scuba diver seems so small here compared to most humans we see in the show. I go into this a little more at the end of the theory, but we know humans have access to shrinking technology, so I think it's very possible the filmmakers shrunk themselves down to film the show. And if you're still not convinced, I searched really hard and found an old SpongeBob DVD bonus feature that basically confirms everything.
Since before time even existed, land-loving scientists have tried to learn the secrets of intelligence. Their studies led them to the sea, where the citizens of one undersea colony demonstrated a genius so enormous, the scientists felt compelled to record their actions for use in teaching mankind how to live better. The name of this miraculous place? Bikini Bottom. Poring over the mass of brainy masterminds scattered about this strange land, the scientists chose 6 Bikini Bottom residents at random to study. As the scientists marveled at the advanced knowledge and superior intellect of these 6 creatures,
I went to college!
They rolled their cameras and took notes. And now, finally, we can learn all of the things that these smarty pantsuses have to teach us. Life lessons from Bikini Bottom.
I don't know how it can get any more clear than that. Now, if you rewatch the show with this new information in mind, some things start to take on a whole new meaning. Throughout the series, there's this weird, unexplained running gag of a human hand interfering with the characters. It's even in the beginning of every episode in the intro for the show. Maybe the filmmakers are doing a bit more than just studying these characters. The hand seems to mostly interfere just to maintain the health and safety of the characters, like treating SpongeBob for the suds.
Well, Mr. SquarePants, it seems you have the suds. Are you ready for your treatment? Oh, Hans!
It makes sense that the filmmakers wouldn't want to risk the safety of their main character. After all, there's no show without SpongeBob, but that's not the only reason why they interfere. Season 3, Episode 16, I Had an Accident, is infamous for having one of the most absurd, confusing endings in the entire show. It ends with a real gorilla suddenly coming out of a Patrick costume and attacking the characters.
A real gorilla? Huh?
Then as soon as SpongeBob begins to question the logic of the scene, this happens.
What's a gorilla doing underwater in the first place?
Well, it's funny you should. I mean, see, George, they're onto us!
Let's get out of here.
What was this episode, bro? Man.
SpongeBob is a weird show, but this has always stuck out as being just a little too weird. But knowing what we know now, I think I can explain what's going on here. This isn't a real gorilla. Every other land animal we've seen underwater wears a helmet and is drawn in a cartoony style. The gorilla is shown in a live-action style, and the only time we ever see live-action characters is when they're human. So I believe both the gorilla and the horse he rides away on are humans wearing costumes. The filmmakers set this whole thing up just to make the episode more entertaining. It's starting to seem like this isn't strictly a nature documentary anymore. It's more of a reality TV show made for entertainment. Who knows what other absurd elements of the show are actually put there by the filmmakers to make the show more entertaining and profitable. Although, based on the people's reaction, it doesn't always seem to pay off. But how far will the filmmakers go to make the show more profitable?
Saturday morning in Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob is watching his favorite Saturday morning show, The Adventures of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, enjoying a bowl of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy bland cereal, and wearing the official Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy breakfast biters.
If we think of this as a television show, this sounds an awful lot like a product placement. I mean, listen to how the narrator specifically says the full names of the products.
The Adventures of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy bland cereal, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy breakfast biters.
Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
Maybe the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy TV show is actually from the surface world. They are human after all. It makes sense that the filmmakers would choose to highlight these popular superhero characters. The more they show, the more they're gonna sell Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy merchandise. Also, Mermaid Man's old team of superheroes is referred to as a subsidiary of Viacom.
The International Justice League of Super Acquaintances, a subsidiary of Viacom.
And Viacom at the time was the company that owned Nickelodeon, which owns SpongeBob. So that's just more proof that Mermaid Man is directly working for the showrunners. Hang on a second, why are Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy the same size as all the fish in Bikini Bottom, even though humans are always shown as massive compared to fish? Whatever, I'll come back to that one later. The show doesn't even just hide product placements. In the episode Model Sponge, they literally trick SpongeBob into making a commercial for a human product.
I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. Director.
Loose the pants!
What's happening?
New sponge commercial. Take one.
Your bathroom is a disaster. Get it cleaned up fast with the new sponge. Just look at that shine.
This is just like in real life how SpongeBob is such a popular character that he's used to sell tons and tons of products. So far I've shown you that the show SpongeBob SquarePants is actually a documentary television show, but the creators continually interfere to push their own agendas and make more money. But that brings us to an important question. Do the characters know they're in a television show? Let's go back to that clip where SpongeBob hits the cameraman.
It means another whole year of boarding school! What happened?
Oh, nothing, SpongeBob. You just struck another pedestrian.
Mrs. Puff calls him a pedestrian, which sounds more like she thinks he's just some random Bikini Bottom citizen. The different types of marine life in SpongeBob are so diverse and weird looking that it's not too hard to believe that the characters just think these filmmakers are another weird type of fish. And back to the gorilla episode, the gorilla and the horse immediately get nervous and run away when SpongeBob questions what's going on.
Oh, it's funny you should. See the George, they're onto us.
Let's get out of here.
Almost like the creators don't want the characters to be aware their lives are being interfered with. Now, there isn't a ton of footage of the characters interacting with the filmmakers, but I dug really deep and found the smoking gun that answers all of our questions. This is an old commercial from 2004 made to promote the SpongeBob movie.
SpongeBob, what kind of jellyfish is that?
It's not a jellyfish, Patrick. It's a spaceship.
Hey guys, it's Carlos from the Zone. I was wondering if you could answer a few questions.
Questions? Run for your lives!
No, Pat, don't you see? It wants to learn about our world, and it's chosen us. I know.
So I think it's pretty clear at this point that the characters are unaware their lives are being filmed and interfered with. But there are some characters that have to have some level of awareness. For example, the Dr. Fish that told the human hand to treat SpongeBob, and the Director Fish that directed the commercial for the human world. What makes these characters so special? First off, the director fish isn't actually from Bikini Bottom. Before he directed this commercial, we saw him as a citizen of New Kelp City in the episode Whatever Happened to SpongeBob. Out of all the characters they could have used, they specifically chose a character from out of town. Almost like the filmmakers didn't want to use anyone in Bikini Bottom so they wouldn't risk everyone finding out about the television show. Then there's the Dr. Fish. We don't know where he originally came from, but he's an extremely suspicious character. Usually he's purple, but sometimes he's orange, sometimes he's purple with orange hands, sometimes he's a pirate, and he bears a striking resemblance to Dr. Manowar from the Jellyfish Convention.
And now it only hurts when you touch it.
Why does he have so many different disguises and identities? What is he hiding? Okay, so this isn't directly related to the television theory, but I have something really interesting to say about this doctor. In season 14's Don't Make Me Laugh, we see the Dr. Fish wearing orange gloves, and I'm pretty sure this is like a super subtle reference to this one time that he randomly had orange arms in season 1. It's like they're trying to retcon this old animation mistake and give it an in-universe explanation. They also did this with Perch Perkins, a side character who's notoriously switched back and forth between having orange and purple skin throughout the entire show. But in season 13, we get this close-up shot of him where we can see little smudges of purple makeup, implying his inconsistent colors was always him just wearing makeup. It's like the creators are telling us that little details matter. Even things that are obviously just animation mistakes have explanations in the lore of this show. Okay, sorry for the tangent, I just thought that was really interesting. Back to the theory. I believe hidden throughout Bikini Bottom are spies like this who are aware they're in a television show and keep tabs on the main characters and make sure everything goes to plan. There's so many suspicious characters in Bikini Bottom that it could literally be anyone. The mailman, the hot dog vendor, Old Man Jenkins, it could literally be anyone. Some people have pointed out that there's this scene with Patrick that could be implying he is a self-aware spy.
3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
But since this is the only example of anything suspicious with Patrick, I think it's a little more likely that he's just too stupid to understand what he's doing here. But what if I told you that the biggest spy of all isn't some random side character? It's one of the main characters of the show. Someone who's been there from the very beginning. Someone who's not even from Bikini Bottom. Someone who's not even from the ocean. That's right. Sandy Cheeks. Sandy Cheeks is the thrill-seeking scientific squirrel from Texas who lives underwater in her tree dome. But why did she come to Bikini Bottom? In the episode Chimps Ahoy, we find out she was hired by a group of chimpanzees to come underwater and create inventions. But why does she need to be underwater to make inventions? She could have just as easily made any of her inventions on land. It must be extremely expensive to maintain a giant dome of air underwater. There is no way the only reason she's here is to make random inventions. I think this whole episode is an elaborate ruse to throw off the other characters from the real reason Sandy is in Bikini Bottom, to spy on the main characters and make sure the show stays on track. Many of the times the characters are in danger, Sandy conveniently steps in to save the day, and many of the wacky, entertaining episode plots are driven by an invention Sandy creates. Everything she does is a calculated move to carry out the hidden agenda of the filmmakers. Her entire friendship with SpongeBob and the other characters is built on a lie. But you're probably saying, Sandy is a sweet, friendly squirrel. There's no way she's behind this. You're not convinced yet? That's okay. Because what I'm about to show you is so mind-blowing, so insanely revealing, that it's actually the whole reason I decided to make this video. Get ready for the big one. Season 10, Episode 10, Feral Friends, is the episode that unlocks this entire mystery. During a birthday party, a green moon suddenly appears and turns everyone except Sandy into less evolved, real-life versions of themselves. Sandy is completely caught off guard by this and decides to call someone for help. And take a guess who she calls.
Hello, French narrator speaking.
Hey, Frenchie, it's me, Sandy.
Ah, Sandy Cheeks. How is it hanging?
Oh, it's not hanging too good, Frenchie. You see, there's this...
Don't say another word. I have been monitoring the behavior of the green moon all day.
Huh, yeah, I guess that's a pretty interesting clip, yeah. Holy sh**! Sandy literally calls the narrator to let him know what's going on and asks for instructions on what to do next. She has been working with him the entire fucking time. He even has a picture of her on his desk.
Oh my god, the narrator! Oh my god!
bro. My mind is just blowing up. My mind is just exploding, dude. This is crazy.
Many people have commented about this, but there has been a major new development for this Sandy is a spy theory. In the brand new SpongeBob movie, Saving Bikini Bottom, we basically get outright confirmation of this theory. Like, it's not even up for debate anymore. The movie reveals Sandy has been working for human scientists this entire time, and we even see this.
The reason I'm back in Texas is because Bikini Bottom...
weren't that the town you were spying on?
I weren't spying. I was... doing observations.
Direct confirmation that Sandy is a spy 3 years after I posted my television theory.
I'm doing something great and beautiful thanks to your scientific research, cheats.
My science? But
I thought I knew you.
It does seem like she didn't know the full extent of what was happening.
I didn't know that you were using me to spy on Bikini Bottom.
And also, it's never outright said that the humans are using them for a secret TV show. It's actually more about using them to create merchandise in the plot of this movie. But we do get confirmation that they've always been filming them, and that the human company that Sandy works for was recently bought out by a different company, which explains why they're focusing more on merchandise in this movie rather than a TV show.
You have reached Boots Laboratories, now a division of Gushing Waters Water Parks and future home of Sea Pals.
Either way, I'm gonna take the W. This theory aged very, very well. This is where I originally planned on ending the video, but there is still one small issue with the television theory. Just one nagging plot hole that contradicts everything. If this is all a television show filmed by scuba divers, then how are we seeing inside the buildings? It's not like any of the humans filming the show could fit inside them. It's the one annoying thing that keeps this theory from being complete. I mean, the most logical explanation is that they have hidden cameras inside of everyone's homes, but we never really see anything like that. Holy shit. Season 6, Episode 24, Truth or Square. The SpongeBob 10th Anniversary Special where they reveal lots of stuff about the characters. But the most damning piece of evidence comes from when the characters get lost in the Krusty Krab vents and end up in a room full of monitors showing live footage of all of their homes.
Oh, my house is on TV.
All of our houses are on TV. Mr. Krabs, why do you have cameras watching us?
Oh, I just want to make sure you all floss after every meal.
Thank you, Mr. Krabs. Dental hygiene is very, very important.
Dental hygiene? Eugene, you lying bastard. Of course he would sell out his friends for a quick buck. And if there's any part of you that thinks there's some chance Mr. Krabs has all these hidden cameras for some other reason, then take a look at what happens next.
Hey, who are those guys?
I think it's us, Patrick. But who are they? Patrick,
whoa! That's crazy. That is crazy.
Alright, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. A cameraman and a boom operator have been following around the characters this entire time. And just like the gorilla, as soon as they get seen, they make a run for it. Okay, so obviously in the new Sandy movie, Mr. Krabs sort of acts surprised and betrayed by Sandy being a spy, which kind of makes it seem like he's not a spy, but think about it. If you were Mr. Krabs and a fellow spy's cover was just blown, you're not just gonna confess that you are also a spy. You're obviously gonna play along and pretend like you didn't know anything. I don't think this really disproves anything here. The case is closed. The television theory is something the show has consistently alluded to from the very first episode to the newest episodes. Maybe one day the show will actually directly address it and our characters will discover the real truth about their world. But regardless, that's my theory. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hey, whoa, hang on a second. You thought I forgot about the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy thing, didn't ya?
Yeah.
Alright, here's a quick bonus theory. Oh yeah, I guess this one already kind of had a bonus mini theory. I'll still do a new proper mini theory after this, so don't worry. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy were two superheroes that fought crime underwater and protected the sea from evil. Whether or not they actually did this or was all staged for television isn't clear, but they both spent their lives underwater until they became old and retired. But after spending so much time under the sea, they no longer fit in with human society. Plus, Mermaid Man is clearly dealing with some form of dementia and PTSD from fighting evil.
But you can't retire. There's evil afoot.
What?
So, they decided to live the rest of their lives in Bikini Bottom, and in order to fit in better with their fellow sea creatures, they made the permanent decision to shrink themselves using Mermaid Man's shrinking belt. The case is closed. Again.
These theories are they're crazy, man. I don't know where he comes up with it. I don't know how he finds it, but the man he's spot on. He is spot on. I believe all of it.
Number 5. Number 5. Wow. 5 ads.
Okay, I'm just gonna say it right now. The television theory is the best SpongeBob theory I have ever made. Like it's not even close. If you were to ask me if any of my theories were actually intended by the creators, I'd definitely say the television theory. There is just so much evidence that this was actually planned from the start, and now 3 years later, there's a movie that's directly confirming it. This theory literally changes everything about this show, and it's so big that I end up using it in almost all of my future theories, and I've got a bunch of new television theory-related discoveries inside of the coming mini-theories too. Speaking of which...
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine.
So, there's this viral image that's gone around the internet that points out a really funny detail about this show. There seems to be a frightening number of miniature dead human skeletons in SpongeBob. And it's a really funny observation, but it's also really strange because why are there a bunch of mini dead human skeletons in SpongeBob? Like, the animators already have a generic design for a fish skeleton. Why are they going out of their way to make these human skeletons? They're obviously much more detailed and harder to draw. And this is something we see in both early and modern SpongeBob. Well, I think the television theory actually provides a pretty good explanation for this. We know there's tons of human scuba divers secretly filming the show, and it even looks like some of them are fish-sized, and we know there is shrinking technology in this show, so like I've already said, I think it's fair to assume that humans shrunk themselves down to better film these characters undetected, which explains why we see so many tiny human skeletons. They're the crew members who sadly passed away during the filming of SpongeBob. They are deep underwater after all, it's not the safest place for humans to be. And that's about all I had to say about this topic. It's not actually that interesting. I probably wouldn't have even bothered making this separate mini-theory if it wasn't for a very interesting piece of SpongeBob history that was recently made public. The original SpongeBob Pitch Bible, the document created by Steven Hillenburg in 1997 to pitch the show to Nickelodeon, was just recently finally made available to the public. And it is full of fascinating early ideas and concept art for the show. But what's interesting to me is that much like the show itself, the Pitch Bible is presented like a fictional in-universe report from a team of deep-sea divers discovering Bikini Bottom for the first time. An afternoon ascent into the deep crystalline gulf, which plummets from the island's coral base, revealed the natural wonder which had so long eluded the eyes of mankind. We had indeed found Sponge Boy, which was the original name for SpongeBob. There before us, glistening in the glow of our dive lamps, sat a submerged treasure unlike any other in the world. We were afforded a first-hand glimpse into the character of Sponge Boy and his world. It's crazy that even the pitch Bible for this show has lore. If this doesn't prove the television theory, I don't know what does. But there's something in this Bible that I always thought was a little strange. On page 12, there's a dedication section. It describes one of the first expeditions to Bikini Bottom taken by a deep-sea diver named Bucky Leavitt, using a new and untested diving suit, which ultimately imploded from the undersea pressures. Bucky died making the only known map of Bikini Bottom. It is to Bucky and his pioneer spirit that we dedicate this research. It's kind of a strange thing to include in a pitch for a kid's show, of all things. The story seems to be inspired by Benjamin Leavitt, the inventor of the suit shown in this photo, but there's no record of him ever dying during an expedition. So it seems like this story about Bucky was completely made up just to add more lore to the show. So it then begs the question, if he is a character in this universe, where is Bucky's body? Could he possibly be one of the human skeletons we've seen throughout the show? Well, we know Bucky died in his old prototype diving suit, so I think his body would probably still be inside of it. So the real question is, do we know of any diving suits in Bikini Bottom? And yes, we do. We see it almost every episode. SpongeBob's television. SpongeBob's TV is clearly supposed to be an old diving suit helmet, but it's strange because it's so small compared to diving suits we've seen worn by other humans. So either this diving suit is from a shrunken human, or it's been compressed down to a smaller size by the pressures of the sea, just like Bucky's. We even see SpongeBob's TV design was a part of the original pitch Bible. I think there's a very good chance that this is supposed to be at least the head of Bucky Liavit. I think every time SpongeBob is watching TV, he's actually staring directly at a dead human skull. And if you don't believe me, in Season 10's Whirly Brain, SpongeBob and Patrick fight over the TV and actually pull it apart. And for the very first time ever, we get a look inside. It's an extremely fast moment, but if you go frame by frame, you'll see that inside of SpongeBob's TV is what looks like a human skull. And that is Skeleton Theory. Rest in peace, Bucky.
Skin feeling dried out? Feel skin relief with the new Sanex Skin Therapy Shower Gel.
And don't forget my cough
2 more ads to the list.
Hello? Don't take a chance.
This is not Mrs. Puff. You may think she's just SpongeBob's boating teacher, but you'd be very, very wrong. For years, she's been running from her dark and mysterious past, but it's finally caught up to her. And behind it all is a mastermind who's been secretly controlling her life and psychologically torturing her. If you guys thought my last 2 theories were mind-blowing, get ready for my biggest conspiracy yet. This is the Mrs. Puff theory.
Mrs. Puff
Now,
theory.
a lot of people have been asking, Alex, how do you come up with these crazy conspiracy theories? Well, I always start these theories by looking for the moments in the show that seem to be implying more than they're letting on. Like I've said before, SpongeBob is a weird show with lots of abstract humor, but I can usually understand the intent the writers had behind a weird joke. But then there's stuff like this.
I hope I still remember how to do this.
Yeah. And it's so confusing and weird that it feels like the writers are trying to imply something beyond just weirdness for the sake of comedy. And nowhere in the show is there more of these moments than with Mrs. Puff. And once I started looking into it, it led me down the deepest rabbit hole I've ever seen from this show. So, let's begin. Mrs. Puff is a boating school teacher in Bikini Bottom. She's passed all of her students except for one, SpongeBob SquarePants. He's taken her driver's test hundreds of times and he always ends up failing it and causing destruction and chaos that usually ends up with Mrs. Puff going to jail, despite it not really being her fault. We also know that she was once married, but her husband was killed by fishermen.
That's my driving teacher, Mrs. Puff.
Mrs. Puff? Oh, she's married.
Oh no, Mr. Krabs, she's single.
Then what happened to Mr. Puff?
She doesn't like to talk about it.
Throughout the show, there are moments like this that seem to be hinting at her having a dark, mysterious past. And in Season 2, Episode 10, No Free Rides, we get the biggest clue about who Mrs. Puff really is. After SpongeBob fails the driving test yet again, Mrs. Puff has just had it with him and ends up just giving up and giving him his license even though he never really passed. She quickly realizes that this is a horrible idea and he'll probably end up destroying the entire town.
So much destruction. This reporter asks, why? Local consensus places the blame on this negligent, selfish driving instructor who...
Remember this clip, because it's going to be very important later on. And then she says this insanely revealing line.
What have I done? Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. I'll have to move to a new city, start a new boating school with a new name. No, not again.
No, not again. Come on, it's like they're just begging someone to make a theory about this. So we now know Mrs. Puff was originally from a different town, she used to own a different boating school, and Mrs. Puff isn't even her real name. There's something in her past that she ran away from. Now, there's been some debate over whether she's actually referring to a new name for herself or for her boating school, but I do think she's talking about her own name. Because if she's trying to run away from something in her past, she wouldn't start a new boating school with her real name in the title. Now, when she says again, I don't think she's just referring to starting a new life.
Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. Not again.
I think at her previous boating school, she had a terrible student just like SpongeBob who she prematurely gave a license to, and it led to something so terrible happening that she had to run away and start a whole new life. In Season 3, Episode 5, Doing Time, we get a flashback to when she first opened up the school.
The opening of my new boating school, I pledge that as long as a student is willing to learn, I shall never give up.
Hi, I'm SpongeBob SquarePants.
With the opening of this new boating school, let's keep in mind that this is not her first boating school. Maybe the whole reason she's making this pledge now at her second school is because she gave up on a student at her previous school, and that led to her having to run away and start a new life. She's pledging to never make the same mistake again. Now let's skip ahead to one of the newer episodes. Season 12, Episode 21, Lighthouse Louie, where Mrs. Puff has SpongeBob organize all the stuff she keeps in the school's lighthouse. There's lots of interesting things hidden in the background, but the first thing that caught my eye was this file labeled Mrs. Puff. It makes sense for a teacher to have files on all their students, but why would she have a file about herself? But let's remember, she's not Mrs. Puff. That's a fake identity she created, and I'm willing to bet all of her fake identification documents are in this file. Hey, Alex from the future here. This is actually the file from Mrs. Puff You're Fired that shows all the time she's failed to pass SpongeBob, but let's be honest, this was the least impressive evidence in this lighthouse, so I think it's fine. But that's not the only hint about Mrs. Puff's past in this lighthouse. There is something in here that directly confirms all of this. As SpongeBob swallows all of Mrs. Puff's junk, we see something very interesting for only a few frames. Deranged boat teacher makes getaway. 10 seasons later, and the creators are still hiding stuff about Mrs. Puff fleeing her old life. It might not look like it at first, but we actually get a ton of new information from this newspaper. This is from the New Kelp Post, which tells us Mrs. Puff originally lived in New Kelp City. Then there's a caption that reads, distracts authorities with balloon animals. And do you remember that clip from the beginning?
I hope I still remember how to do this.
Yeah. So whenever Mrs. Puff makes a getaway or commits a crime, she leaves behind a balloon animal to distract the police. I'm telling you guys, these writers don't just do stuff randomly, they have reasons for everything. Okay, so before we move on, let me talk about this newspaper. This was by far the most direct, unambiguous piece of evidence the show has ever given us for a theory, and I have never found anything else like it in the entire show. It's the white whale of SpongeBob theory evidence. But would you believe me if I told you that this newspaper actually has more hidden information inside of it that I missed? If we look at the storyboard for this episode, we can see the newspaper originally had even more information about Mrs. Puff. Obviously the big one, we now finally know Mrs. Puff's real name. Bobby Blowfish. Originally, we only had the date the newspaper was published, but now we have the year. This is the same year that the SpongeBob pilot came out. And finally, we now know how Mrs. Puff escaped the cops chasing her. In the bottom picture, we see her heading towards a cliff with a sign that says Rock Bottom, a place that only the most skilled drivers could navigate. How is there still so much hidden lore in this newspaper? And the most damning piece of evidence from this newspaper is actually the picture of Mrs. Puff. Kind of a strange photo, right? We have seen this exact same photo of her before. In the episode No Free Rides, when she imagines what would happen if SpongeBob got his license.
Local consensus places the blame on this negligent, selfish driving instructor.
Oh, it's the mugshot! Oh, you're right!
Holy fuck, bro! This isn't a conspiracy! This is real!
This means that this isn't just her imagination of what might happen. This is also her remembering what happened when she lived in New Kelp City and prematurely gave one of her students a license. And I'm willing to bet that the fish reporting the news is the exact same one who reported about her in New Kelp City. Let me explain. We know from the episode Whatever Happened to SpongeBob that reporters from the Bikini Bottom News can also work for the New Kelp City News. But the real reason I think this is because of his hair. In the entire show, we have never seen this fish reporter with hair before. Why would the creators go out of their way to add that detail? Because Mrs. Puff isn't imagining him as he looks now. She's remembering him from years ago when he used to have hair, when he reported about her in New Kelp City. But how does he have hair if he's a robot? Alright, listen, when you make 8 crazy different theories, sometimes they're not all gonna perfectly line up, okay? What are you gonna do? Mrs. Puff has been running from her past ever since, and is now forced to relive her experience with an unteachable student through SpongeBob. But reliving this trauma has pushed her to the point of complete insanity. And trust me when I say that you have no idea how delusional she actually is. Another running gag throughout the series is Mrs. Puff's occasional nervous breakdowns or moments of insanity because of SpongeBob, and they get more severe as the show continues. At first she did care for SpongeBob, but in the newer episodes she literally tries to kill SpongeBob just to get him out of her life. Even SpongeBob just walking up to her gives her severe PTSD.
Hi, Mrs. Puff.
Hit the brakes! SpongeBob! Watch the tree! Laugh!
Wait, Mrs. Puff! We're not driving!
But these mostly seem like just one-off moments, and for the most part, Mrs. Puff is still a functioning member of society, right? I'm going to show you that she's actually much more insane and delusional than you may think. And some of the episodes she's in take place entirely in her own head. If we're talking about how insane Mrs. Puff is, there is no better place to start than the episode Doing Time. Once again, SpongeBob fails the voting test and causes destruction and chaos, which leads to Mrs. Puff going to jail. SpongeBob keeps breaking into jail to try and bust her out, but Mrs. Puff actually prefers being in jail over teaching him. We actually get another interesting line about Mrs. Puff's past in this episode.
Okay, you can do this, Puff. You can get through this without losing your sanity. Oh, that's a road we don't want to go down again.
So we know that Mrs. Puff has lost her sanity in the past, probably from her previous terrible student. But it seems like she's recovered since then, except in this episode she has a complete mental breakdown. SpongeBob keeps appearing in impossible places until she gets thrown into solitary confinement, where each wall of the room transforms into a giant SpongeBob face. And then the episode ends in a way that's so weird and confusing that it rivals the infamous gorilla episode ending. As Mrs. Puff freaks out, she's suddenly transported back into the beginning of the episode when SpongeBob was taking the test. Except this time, SpongeBob gets arrested instead of her.
Help! Help! No! This is not a good time! No! I can't believe it! It was all a dream! I'm not going to jail!
Why would you go to jail? You already did your time.
Forget it.
So what's really going on in this episode? Was the ending all in her head? Is Mrs. Puff just caught in an endless loop? I think this entire episode is inside of Mrs. Puff's head, and she's actually on the outside the whole time, but she's been imagining herself inside of prison. I can explain. Listen closely to what the police officer tells Mrs. Puff.
I'm not going to jail!
Why would you go to jail? You already did your time.
Why would you go to jail? You already did your time. And then revealing she's still in a prison uniform despite being on the outside. So this scene is obviously inside of her head, which means everything we see is symbolic. And if we can understand the symbolism of it, we can understand what's really going on with Mrs. Puff. Notice how she's suddenly wearing a black and white striped prison uniform, even though the entire episode she's been wearing this orange jumpsuit. Why would the creators go to the extra effort to draw a whole new prison uniform for her? Well, we've seen her wear this black and white prison uniform before, the very first time she went to prison back in Season 1, Episode 7, Hall Monitor. So when the police officer says, "You've already done your time," he's referring to the first time she went to jail. But why is she still wearing that uniform outside of prison? Well, she may have gotten out of jail, but she was by no means free. Having to teach SpongeBob is a prison in itself, and she manifests that by believing she's in jail and wearing a prison uniform despite being on the outside. This entire episode, every time SpongeBob magically appears, is all inside of her head. She is completely delusional, and hints that she's experiencing these hallucinations don't stop there. Just 6 episodes later, she goes to a house party SpongeBob throws, and while everyone is talking and having a good time, in the background we see she's literally sitting by herself talking to an ice sculpture of SpongeBob. You can't tell me this isn't intentional. I mean, look at this. By herself.
No f***ing way! way. You're lying. You're lying. You're lying. That is insane. That is actually insane.
Now, back in the episode No Free Rides, there is a very strange picture inside of Mrs. Puff's home. It's a picture of Mrs. Puff inside of a picture of Mrs. Puff inside of a picture of Mrs. Puff, creating an infinite loop. This is something that has confused SpongeBob fans for years. But like everything in the show, there is a reason for it being there. One of the SpongeBob storyboard artists actually called it the biggest mystery in the entire show. If you think about it, this is just like the end of Doing Time, where she's stuck in an infinite loop of SpongeBob failing the driving test. Because it's all symbolic of what her life is, just an endless cycle of SpongeBob taking the test and failing, and no matter what she does to try and escape, she always ends up back in the same place at the end of the episode. So this picture is another symbolic manifestation of what she's feeling. We even see another one of these pictures all the way in Season 9, Episode 5, Bumper to Bumper. And hey, we got another one in Season 13, Potato Puff. This is something that the show is consistently alluding to. Mrs. Puff is an unreliable narrator, and anything we see with her could potentially all be inside of her own head. In fact, I believe I found another episode that takes place inside of her head. In Season 9, Episode 17, SpongeBob Long Pants, SpongeBob goes to a different boating instructor and actually gets his license. But as soon as he does, we briefly cut to Mrs. Puff waking up.
You pass.
I finally got my driver's license!
Lock your doors, bar your windows, it's the end of the world!
Now, this seems like it's probably just a throwaway gag where Mrs. Puff somehow senses that SpongeBob got his license and it causes her to wake up and freak out. You know, it's a good bit, it's funny, but I have a question. If the joke is that she's supposed to be waking up at the exact time SpongeBob gets his license, how come she wakes up at night when SpongeBob clearly gets his license during the day? Because this entire episode actually takes place inside of Mrs. Puff's head, and this is the only part of the episode in the real world.
I don't know what that was all about, but I'm glad it's over.
Originally, I paused the theory here to explain how we're able to see her hallucinations, even though I claim the show's supposed to be a nature documentary in my television theory. But if everything's supposed to be from a camera, then how are we seeing things from inside Mrs. Puff's head? In fact, how do we see dreams and flashbacks and thought bubbles? But I already explained that in my new imagination mini theory, so definitely check that one out if you missed it. It adds a whole new layer to why Mrs. Puff is hallucinating so much. Back to the theory, we know that her insanity has caused her to live a life of delusion, but if you remember back to the Lighthouse episode, she's also become an extreme hoarder, and looking at her collection of junk is like a look directly into her mind, so there's gotta be something we can learn about her from it. There's a picture of her boyfriend, Mr. Krabs, the hall monitor belt she gives her students, the mean drawings her students make her, SpongeBob's diary, a boating safety helmet. Wait, SpongeBob's diary? Why does she have SpongeBob's diary? The last time we saw that, it was safely put away in SpongeBob's library. What's it doing in her lighthouse? And why does she have Squidward's painting? And a table from the Krusty Krab? And SpongeBob's bike? And Squidward's teddy bear? And the hair curlers Mr. Krabs had? Okay, so technically those were originally Mrs. Puff's hair curlers.
Even Mrs. Puff's hair curlers?
That one was a gift.
But it's implied that Mr. Krabs stole them from her, so her having them now probably means she stole them back. It still works for the point I'm trying to make. And that statue of Squidward? And that diamond ring? And that crown? And that bucket of radioactive waste? And that jellyfish sign? Oh my god. Mrs. Puff is a kleptomaniac. Mrs. Puff has been stealing from everyone in Bikini Bottom. I can even prove that her pet snail from Season 3, Episode 19 was stolen.
My snail is up a tree. I've had her since I was a little girl.
You've had that snail since you've been a little girl, huh? Then how come that is the exact same snail Squidward had 4 episodes ago in the Great Snail Race?
I wouldn't let Snelly here play with that mongrel mutt. She's a purebred. See, she even has her own papers.
He even has her paperwork. Mrs. Puff clearly stole the snail from Squidward. But why the hell would Mrs. Puff steal all this other junk? What possible use could she have for any of it? We could find the answer to that question by looking at this green hat and this purple jacket. These were gifts Mr. Krabs bought her on their first date, but she ended up feeling uncomfortable receiving them and gave them back to him.
I'm afraid I just don't feel comfortable accepting all these gifts.
Except apparently she's not too uncomfortable to steal them back afterwards. So clearly Mrs. Puff isn't stealing this stuff because she wants to use it. She just steals for the thrill of it. Maybe stealing things is her way of coping with the insanity of her everyday life. And remember, this isn't the first time she's gone insane.
You can get through this without losing your sanity. Oh, that's a road we don't want to go down again.
In fact, I have reason to believe that she started stealing things way back whenever she first went insane.
I hope I still remember how to do this.
I don't think she's just talking about remembering how to make balloon animals. She's probably also referring to remembering how to steal a boat. And if that's not enough for you, in a SpongeBob comic book, she actually admits that she used to rob banks and she wears the exact same ski mask. Ooh, and we can see the ski mask in the newspaper storyboard. That's cool. Mrs. Puff lives a completely delusional and miserable life, all because she has to teach SpongeBob how to drive. It's led her to steal from the people she cares about and completely disassociate from reality. But that begs a very important question. If SpongeBob is causing her life to be so miserable, then why does she even keep teaching him? After all the destruction and pain he's caused, she'd totally be justified to expel him, right? I mean, she will literally try and kill him so she doesn't have to teach him, but for some reason she can't just expel him. It's almost like there's someone forcing her to teach SpongeBob.
It's a Russ. It's a Russ.
Back to the episode No Free Rides. After prematurely giving SpongeBob a license, she steals his boatmobile so he can't hurt anyone. In the end, this causes her to get arrested and go to jail, but then SpongeBob tells her this.
And besides, the warden says she'll let you go early if you do her a favor.
What's that?
Free driving lessons!
She'll get to leave prison early if she gives free driving lessons. That seems like an oddly specific requirement. And that's not the only time this gets mentioned either. In Season 9, Episode 5, Bumper to Bumper, we get this scene.
If only SpongeBob could pass his boating test, he'd be out of my life once and for all. Unfortunately, I keep getting reminded of the consequences if I get too angry with the little nuisance.
Consequences? Are you telling me that if she refuses to teach SpongeBob specifically, she'll be violating her parole and get sent back to jail? Why does the prison even care if Mrs. Puff teaches SpongeBob? Is it just part of some weird community service? But things start to get really suspicious at the end of Season 7, Episode 5, Summer Job. Once again, Mrs. Puff ends up in jail, but this time she's forced to go to a prison boating school.
Oh, wow! A driver's education class!
Good day, class!
Oh, I must be having a nightmare! What's he doing here?
Dear Mrs. Puff, I'm following in your footsteps and got a job as a driver's ed teacher for the summer.
Who in their right mind would hire SpongeBob to do this after he's literally destroyed the city countless times while driving? Is this just another one of Mrs. Puff's delusions? Or is the prison intentionally forcing her to be around SpongeBob just to torture her? I mean, look at the way the guard forces her to sit there and listen to him.
Get me out of here!
And look at that evil smile he has as he watches her endure this torture. There is something very strange going on with this prison. Then, in Season 10, Episode 8, The Getaway, Mrs. Puff meets a criminal named Dorsal Dan and starts to get romantic feelings for him. This is also while she's still dating Mr. Krabs. Shame on you, Mrs. Puff. At the end of the episode, they both accidentally land in prison, and the warden puts him in solitary confinement.
Warden, I found this one pulling up outside the prison.
Dorsal Dan, a notorious getaway driver. Toss him in the clink.
I'll wait for you, my little tenderfoot.
She says tenderfoot here, by the way, because he was really good at driving. A lot of people thought she said something else. In or out of jail, this prison will stop at nothing to make sure she is alone and miserable. But why? Who's behind all of this? Why would anyone care this much about torturing Mrs. Puff? Who's the mastermind pulling the strings? Well, maybe it has something to do with her old life in New Kelp City. Maybe she crossed someone and they've been plotting their revenge ever since. But I've looked in every single frame of New Kelp City and there is nothing connecting it back to the prison. I've looked literally everywhere and there's not a single person from the city that has anything to do with Mrs. Puff. Well, I mean, maybe except for the literal warden of the prison she's being kept in. He may be hiding slightly off screen, but that is clearly the same warden of the Bikini Bottom prison. And this isn't some random background character that the show reuses all the time. He is a very distinct character. You can call me out on the Squilliam video all you want, but not this time. I've got some new thoughts on this mastermind warden theory, but I'll save them for the next mini theory. But wait a second. If the warden was originally from New Kelp City, then he'd probably know about Mrs. Puff's dark past and her true identity. So why hasn't he exposed her? He's just kept quiet about the fact that one of his inmates is living a completely false identity. She'd probably even get more prison time when they find out who she really is, so why hasn't he said anything? This is where things get very interesting. So, we know Mrs. Puff prematurely gave a student at her original boating school a license, and that led to them causing chaos and destruction. Maybe this student accidentally did something terrible to the warden, and he's blamed Mrs. Puff ever since. Whatever happened was so terrible that it caused him to move to Bikini Bottom and get a job as the warden of the town's prison. And to his surprise, he finds out that one of his inmates is actually the person he blames for that terrible thing happening. This works out perfectly for him. He can finally get his revenge on Mrs. Puff by making her life miserable. All he has to do is reveal her dark secret and she'll be stuck in jail for much longer. Except for one small issue with his plan. Mrs. Puff actually likes being in prison.
One day down, 2,528 to go. Oh, that's just shy of 4 years without SpongeBob. I'm going to enjoy this.
So, he comes up with a new plan. Keep Mrs. Puff secret and let her out of prison early, but only under the condition that she has to teach SpongeBob. He's literally turning her normal life into a prison. And he makes sure going back to prison to avoid SpongeBob isn't even an option for her anymore, because he'll make sure that SpongeBob is always in there with her. And he's not gonna let her escape and start a new life like she did in New Kelp City. He makes sure to give her an ankle bracelet that doesn't let her leave Bikini Bottom.
I can't even leave town without violating my parole.
He is the mastermind who's been controlling everything this entire time. Alright, gonna interrupt here. The warden that told Mrs. Puff she could leave prison if she gave free driving lessons was actually referred to as a female.
And besides, the warden says she'll let you go early if you do her a favor.
So that's my bad. That definitely wasn't the same warden. It doesn't ruin my theory, but like I said, I've got some new ideas for this part that I'll talk about later. But guess what? His insidious plan doesn't even end there. This is not the first time we've seen the warden character. We first see him in season 4, episode 2, Crabs vs. Plankton. In this episode, Plankton slips on some water in the Krusty Krab and decides to sue Mr. Krabs for everything he owns. And then guess who shows up out of nowhere and offers to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer?
What I really need is a good lawyer.
Whoa, did somebody say lawyer? Richard A. Bottomfeeder, attorney at law. I couldn't help but notice that despicable display.
Richard A. Bottomfeeder, the warden of the Bikini Bottom prison, is also apparently a lawyer? That's kind of strange. Those both sound like major careers. You usually wouldn't imagine someone being both. Then he says he'll be Mr. Krabs' lawyer completely free of charge.
So, how much is this gonna cost me?
Actually, I won't charge a dime unless we win.
Well, that's awfully generous of you, Richard. Alright, a lot of people pointed out that this is actually something lawyers sometimes do, but when you add it up with everything else, it's still kinda suspiciously convenient. That's the point I'm trying to make here. He seems very confident that he can win the case, but right before he goes to court, he slips on some water and says SpongeBob will have to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer now.
Oh, this is gonna be a slam dunk.
Oh no! Mr. Krabs' lawyer, speak to me! Wrapped with pain, can't move.
Looks like you're gonna have to handle this one, son.
He tells SpongeBob that he has to represent Mr. Krabs, even though he himself called SpongeBob a liability.
Actually, SpongeBob, we won't be needing any testimony from you. Why, you'd be more of a, liability than an asset.
But it's okay, because apparently all SpongeBob needs to win is inside of Richard's briefcase.
Everything you need to win is in this here case. Really? Everything?
Except when SpongeBob gets to court, he realizes that Richard never gave him the combination to the case.
It's, all in here.
Really?
Yep, right in here.
Is there a problem?
Your lawyer didn't give me the combination.
Either Richard A. Bottomfeeder is the worst lawyer in history, or this is all part of his elaborate plan to ruin Mrs. Puff's life. Here's what I think happened. First, he finds out that Mr. Krabs is being sued, and he wants to ensure that Mr. Krabs loses the case because he wants to destroy any chance Mrs. Puff has at finding love. So he pretends to be a lawyer, even offering his services for free, something Mr. Krabs can't resist. He makes Mr. Krabs feel confident that they're gonna win the case, and then at the last second, he pretends to get into an accident so he can't represent Mr. Krabs. Instead of finding a real lawyer to replace him, he tells the most incompetent person for the job, SpongeBob, that he has to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer, and he gives him a case that allegedly has all the answers in it without actually giving SpongeBob the combination, setting him up for a total failure in court. Richard A. Bottomfeeder refuses to let anyone get close to Mrs. Puff, not Dorsal Dan, and not Mr. Krabs. This guy has squillion levels of hate for Mrs. Puff. But why? What exactly did her previous student do that warrants this this much torture. It can't be something as simple as him or his property getting damaged. It has to be something life-changing, something like losing a loved one because of the student's reckless driving. And I think the show gives us one last hint about who this might have been. All the pictures of Mrs. Puff's house are very meaningful to her. She's got photos of Mr. Krabs, her pet snail, and of course those infinitely looping photos that told us so much about her mental state. But there is one more photo in this house that might be the key to this entire conspiracy. In season 12, episode 14, Plankton's Old Chum, we see a photo of someone we've never seen before on Mrs. Puff's wall. There's some surprising similarities between this character and Richard. The green color, the red bow tie, the overall fancy, serious appearance. It clearly isn't the same person, but maybe this is someone related to Richard, like a father, a son, or a brother that Mrs. Puff's former student killed. And the reason she keeps a photo of him up is to have a permanent reminder to never make the same mistake of giving someone a license who doesn't deserve it. Mrs. Puff is a boating school teacher who once made a terrible mistake that led to the loss of her business, identity, sanity, and any chance at finding happiness. I like to think that there used to be a time when she was happy, back when her husband was still alive. If only he was still around today, maybe she wouldn't have to face all of this on her own. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. Is what I would say if I was done, except her husband is still alive.
Wait, what?
In the SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob and Patrick travel to a gift shop named Shell City that's full of dead fish turned into knickknacks and ornaments. Except they end up setting off the smoke detector, which activates the sprinkler system and brings all the dead fish back to life, including a very familiar looking pufferfish hanging from the ceiling. Mr. Puff is alive. Well, wait a second. If he's alive and he escaped, then why hasn't he gone back to Mrs. Puff? Why is she still alone? Because remember, she ran away from their home in New Kelp City and started a new identity. So sadly, Mr. Puff has no way of finding her. The tragedy of Mrs. Puff's story is that her happiness is just a city away, but she can never even leave town because that would violate her parole. Richard A. Bottomfeeder probably even knows her husband is alive and is making sure they're never reunited. As the name says, Richard really is a bottom feeder.
Damn.
Incredibly excited because we get to talk to the voice of Karen today, Jill Talley.
I love trying to make sense out of SpongeBob. My adorable nephew called me up and he just was like, hey, Jill, do you know about this? What do you make of this? Like, what do you think about this Mrs. Puff? And I didn't know what he was talking about. It was like a fever dream because I wasn't aware of all the conspiracy stuff. So all I'm hearing on the phone is criminal, past clues. And I'm going, what is he talking about? I said, I'm going to look into it, Frankie. So then I went online and I started looking at it and it was fascinating. Wow. I was in. I was going, I want to know too.
Oh boy, another ad for me.
So, the Mrs. Puff theory. I guess maybe a few people might have watched this
Many
one.
million.
Yeah, so this is the one that really took off, and for good reason. It's really the one theory where the creators just straight up unambiguously hand us the lore. You know, as opposed to the usual vague details and Easter eggs that may or may not be hinting at something. But how does it hold up now? Well, you might be surprised to hear that I'd probably only put it in 4th place. I think the first 2/3 are really strong and it could have been one of my best theories, but then I kind of go on this weird tangent in the 3rd part with this random background warden character with a bunch of assumptions and a kind of weak final connection to this vaguely similar picture. I think I just really wanted to give this theory more of a sense of closure and a final big twist, but that ultimately made it feel kind of forced in the end. But I have since ended up coming up with so many new ideas and discoveries for this theory that I decided to just make the next mini theory just a straight up Mrs. Puff Part 2. So if we pretend like this new stuff was always part of the theory, I think I'll bump it up to 2nd place where it rightfully belongs. So without further ado, here is the Mrs. Puff theory Part 2. So, there's been a lot of new evidence that's come out about Mrs. Puff since I posted my theory. Some I already added to the main theory, like her real name being discovered, so go watch that if you haven't already. But I saved some really cool discoveries and new ideas just for this mini theory. Like, in Lighthouse Louie, I missed this the first time, but if you look closely in her pile of junk, you can actually see a dead police officer's corpse. Oh my god! Ah! Ah! Actually, no, this is just an obstacle from her training course. But I bet you didn't know, in Camp Coral, we see her dispose of the real Mrs. Puff's dead body. Ah! 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 Also no, this is just a piñata that looks like her. Okay, but they're clearly trying to mess with us at this point. Before I get into the actual new discoveries, I want to talk about some alternative ideas I've come up with for some parts of the Mrs. Puff theory. As I've already said, I'm not the biggest fan of where I took the third part of this theory. I really wanted there to be this big reveal about why the prison is forcing Mrs. Puff to teach SpongeBob, when in reality it just makes so much more sense that, like in Doing Time, every time Mrs. Puff sees SpongeBob in jail, she's actually just hallucinating.
Good day, class. I must be having a nightmare.
You know, there's just way more direct evidence in the show to support this, as opposed to this convoluted warden theory. And it's further supported by my new imagination mini theory from earlier in this video. We know the show exists in a world where things you imagine can easily come to life. And Mrs. Puff is constantly imagining her fear of SpongeBob or the guilt from her past mistakes. So it makes sense that she would get trapped in her own delusions so often. But there's always been this big loose end in my theory that I've always wanted to find a way to wrap up. We know Mrs. Puff prematurely gave a license to one of her previous students in New Kelp City, and that led to the city being destroyed.
Local consensus places the blame on this negligent, selfish driving instructor.
But who was Mrs. Puff's original student before SpongeBob? And while we haven't gotten any new evidence about this, I think I've got two strong candidates for who it could be. One of the best comments I got from the Mrs. Puff video was the idea that the original student was actually SpongeBob's cousin, Stanley S. Squarepants.
Hi, Squidward. I'd like you to meet my cousin Stanley. We're related.
There's two of them?
Stanley is a character we meet for only one episode in Season 5. He's SpongeBob's cousin from out of town, and he's extremely accident-prone, even more than SpongeBob. Now, we don't know what town he's from, but we know his Uncle Sherm sent him away because he was too destructive. So he totally fits the idea of Mrs. Puff's former student that probably destroyed New Kelp City. It would also add another layer to why Mrs. Puff is so tortured by SpongeBob specifically. He would literally look and act exactly like her former student.
There's two of them?
So yeah, I think this is totally plausible. Great comment. The only thing that kind of holds this theory back is the lack of any actual concrete connection between Stanley and Mrs. Puff. Like, unfortunately, they're never in the same episode. But I think I have another possible candidate for this mystery student. Someone who we actually see interact with Mrs. Puff. In the Mrs. Puff theory, I theorized that the entire episode Doing Time was all imagined by Mrs. Puff, and everything we see, even small details like her changing prison uniforms, are symbolic for what's really going on inside of her head. But if that's true, then what does this random other prisoner that keeps showing up symbolize?
Hey there, Puff Mama. What's today's grub?
Hi, Donna. It's chilly.
I wouldn't have thought much about it if it wasn't for this very interesting moment where she returns at the end of the episode.
Oh, it's just my imagination again.
So what's for dinner tonight, Puff Mama? Chili?
I think this could be implying that Donna is Mrs. Puff's original student. We see her driving Mrs. Puff's boat in a free-fall crash, just like her old student probably also did. And then she literally gets replaced by SpongeBob.
So what's for dinner tonight, Puff Mama? Chili?
Forget it.
Just like how we actually replaced her original student. So yeah, I think both Donna and Stanley are pretty good candidates for the original student. Stanley is a bit more thematically fitting, but Donna actually has some direct evidence in the show. So yeah, I could see it being either of them. But that's all just tying up loose ends. The real reason I decided to cover Mrs. Puff again in this mini theory is because of two major new developments in recent SpongeBob episodes. The first first is in the season 13 episode, Arbor Day Disarray. In this episode, Sandy gives everyone trees she grew, and we get this scene between Mrs. Puff and her tree.
I love talking to someone who knows how to keep a secret. I can finally tell someone what really happened when I pulled that job in Shell City.
What really happened when I pulled that job in Shell City? They're still adding more mysteries to solve about Mrs. Puff. It sounds like Mrs. Puff did some kind of heist or maybe has some connection to Shell City from the SpongeBob movie. And if you remember, I theorized that Shell City was the place Mr. Puff, her former dead husband, was being held. They end up setting off the smoke detector, which activates the sprinkler system and brings all the dead fish back to life, including a very familiar looking pufferfish hanging from the ceiling. Mr. Puff is alive. So, is it possible this job is somehow related to Mr. Puff? Well, before we get into that, there is one more new development we need to talk about. In the season 14 episode, Hysterical History, for the very first time ever, we actually do get to definitively see Mr. Puff when he was alive.
Bikini Bottom's own titan of industry, Mr. Puff, ran the first successful boat assembly line.
So, this episode is just a bunch of flashbacks from Bikini Bottom's history, and we learn that Mr. Puff was actually a wealthy businessman who ran a boat factory. And Sandy later confirms that this is all actually true. This isn't just a story SpongeBob made up. Now, Mr. Puff looks and sounds a lot like Mrs. Puff.
Speed up, line number 5.
And the other flashbacks in this episode seem to be about ancestors of our main characters, so maybe this is actually supposed to be just a relative of Mrs. Puff, not her dead husband. But remember, Mrs. Puff is not originally from Bikini Bottom, and we know her last name isn't really Puff, it's Blowfish. So this is most likely her former husband, Mr. Puff, before he died. And unfortunately, this does seem to disprove my Mr. Puff theory, because he clearly looks very different than the pufferfish we see in Shell City. But even if this pufferfish wasn't Mr. Puff, I don't think I was wrong about Mr. Puff being at Shell City. The fact that he's shown as a dried up, hanging pufferfish with googly eyes is way too similar to be a coincidence. And then there's the fact that they just confirmed Mrs. Puff has some sort of history with Shell City specifically. I think Mr. Puff was abducted and taken to Shell City, but the reason why we don't see him in the SpongeBob movie is probably because he was already sold to someone else by that point, meaning he was unfortunately never saved by SpongeBob. So that leaves us with one final question. What was the job Mrs. Puff pulled at Shell City, and what does it have to do with her husband's death? Well, my first guess is that this job was some sort of rescue mission to save Mr. Puff from Shell City, and she failed. But listen to how she talks about it.
I can finally tell someone what really happened when I pulled that job in Shell City.
Whatever happened at Shell City, she's happy about it. In fact, it's kind of a sinister, nefarious happiness.
What really happened when I pulled that job?
She's not devastated that her husband was lost forever. She's happy about it. I never really considered this before, but could Mrs. Puff actually be responsible for her husband's death? Did Mrs. Puff kill her husband? I mean, we know Plankton sold Neptune's crown to Shell City.
I just wanted to say thanks again for selling me the crown. I sold it to a guy in Shell City.
So it does seem possible to arrange for this kind of thing to happen. And Arbor Day Disarray ends with Mrs. Puff's tree ratting her out to the police.
Hello, police department? I got a lead on that Shell City job.
I gotta go.
Why would the Bikini Bottom police care about something she did at a human gift shop? I mean, they didn't care when SpongeBob stole from there. The only explanation is that she wasn't stealing from humans, she was giving them something, or someone, from Bikini Bottom, Mr. Puff. Mrs. Puff arranged for fishermen to kidnap and kill her husband. That's what really happened at Shell City. But why? Well, other than Mr. Puff kind of seeming like a jerk who mistreats his employees, he's also very wealthy, which means that when he died, in a way that can't be traced back to Mrs. Puff, as his wife, she would inherit his money, which explains how Mrs. Puff, who previously had to abandon her entire life and start over from scratch in Bikini Bottom, could afford to open a massive boating school. Maybe this was her plan all along: get close to some rich jerk, marry him, and then have him killed to inherit his money. These little breadcrumbs they've given us have told us so much more about Mrs. Puff's past, but also, maybe, just maybe, her future as well. Mr. Puff was portrayed as a greedy, unethical capitalist who only cared about money, even at the expense of his employees. And does that remind you of anyone else in Mrs. Puff's life?
Unhand that penny or the arm comes off! Keep on trucking, SpongeBob!
How could you trade SpongeBob for 62 cents?
You think I could have gotten more?
If she did it to Mr. Puff, who's to say she's not planning to do it again to Mr. Krabs? Maybe this is the entire reason why she's dating him. Let's just hope Mr. Krabs isn't planning on getting married anytime soon. The imaginary doppelganger Mr. Krabs, that is. And that is the Mrs. Puff Theory Part 2. Are the Bikini Bottom citizens the result of nuclear radiation? Who is Pearl's mother? What is the Krabby Patty's secret formula? These are by far the 3 biggest questions in the show SpongeBob SquarePants, and today I'm going to be answering all 3 of them and more with just one theory. Get ready for the darkest SpongeBob conspiracy you'll ever see. This is the evolution theory. By far, the most popular SpongeBob theory out there is the Bikini Atoll nuclear radiation theory. It's pretty simple. It's been confirmed that Bikini Bottom is actually beneath a real-life place called Bikini Atoll. From 1946 to 1958, the United States did nuclear tests there, devastating the area and leaving it radioactive even to this day. The theory states that the reason why the citizens of Bikini Bottom can talk and have formed advanced societies is because of mutations caused by these nuclear tests. And that's about the whole theory. Even though there's tons and tons of videos about it, none of them actually go in depth with it or really look through the show for evidence. But y'all know that if Alex Bale is making a theory on it, then it's not going to be some baby surface level analysis. And once I really started looking into this theory, I realized that there is so much more here than anyone thinks. Get ready, because today we're going to be solving the biggest mysteries in the history of SpongeBob SquarePants and changing the way you look at the entire show. So without further ado, let's begin the theory. In order to find out whether the Bikini Atoll theory is true, we first have to determine whether fish talking and being so intelligent is unique to Bikini Bottom, or if that's just the way the SpongeBob universe works. You know, it could just be that all animals in this world are able to talk, and that's completely normal because at the end of the day, SpongeBob is still just a cartoon. Well, if we take a look at Season 10, Episode 10, Feral Friends, we get a bit of a hint about how the SpongeBob world works. In this episode, a green moon appears and transforms all the characters into less cartoony, real-life versions of themselves.
SpongeBob? Patrick?
Just like in real life, they can't talk and end up trying to eat each other. The French narrator is watching all this unfold, and he says this very important line.
I have been monitoring the behavior of the green moon all day. It is called Neptune's moon. Every 100 years, it de-evolves everyone in Bikini Bottom into primal fish.
Every 100 years, it de-evolves everyone in Bikini Bottom into primal fish. So this implies that the characters in Bikini Bottom are more evolved and were once like these primal fish. But this doesn't prove that the evolution only exists in Bikini Bottom. It could still be a worldwide phenomenon. Remember that bonus DVD clip I found in my television theory? It was about humans studying fish in Bikini Bottom because of their intelligence.
Land-loving scientists have tried to learn the secrets of intelligence. Their studies led them to the sea, where the citizens of one undersea colony demonstrated created a genius so enormous, the scientists felt compelled to record their actions for use in teaching mankind how to live better.
This makes it sound an awful lot like the fish in Bikini Bottom actually are uniquely evolved and it's not some worldwide phase. Then, in the SpongeBob 20-year anniversary special, SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout, we get a major piece of evidence for this theory. SpongeBob and Patrick take a tour of the surface world and eventually go to a fish store and see some very realistic, less evolved fish.
What kind of monsters would want to keep fish folk in jail like this? They're so beautiful.
They can't talk back to SpongeBob and Patrick, and they're actually able to swim freely through the water instead of being affected by gravity. They are clearly showing us that both evolved and primitive fish exist in this universe at the same time. Now, sometimes we've seen Bikini Bottom characters represented as realistic fish like this, but only when they're out of water, never while they're still in water like these fish. We even see this again in the beginning of the third SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run. The movie opens with a coral reef full of these realistic primal fish, but eventually we get to Bikini Bottom where the more evolved fish live. So there you go, direct proof that the citizens of Bikini Bottom are uniquely evolved. This is a very deliberate world building choice for the creators to make. So I guess that kind of confirms the Bikini Atoll theory. Theory confirmed! We did it! Woo! Well, let's hold on for a second. As much as I'd love to call this theory complete, there's actually one major piece of evidence that gives me some resistance. Something I've never seen anyone else bring up when talking about this theory. Prehistoric Bikini Bottom. We've seen episodes like UGG or SB129 that show Bikini Bottom millions of years in the past, but we still see evolved versions of SpongeBob and Patrick. Sure, they may not be super intelligent or advanced, but they're still clearly way more evolved than the primitive, realistic versions we see in Feral Friends or in the fish store. So, how are we seeing these evolutions millions of years before the Bikini Atoll tests? Well, unfortunately, I think the only conclusion is that the Bikini Atoll theory just isn't true. I mean, clearly something has caused Bikini Bottom citizens to be uniquely evolved, there's no denying that. But whatever caused it took place millions of years ago and couldn't have been the Bikini Atoll nuclear tests. Then, what really caused the evolution? In the entire show, the only thing we've seen that directly affects the evolution of characters is the Green Moon and Feral Friends. Except the French narrator specifically calls it Neptune's moon.
It is called Neptune's moon.
Named after the ruler of the seven seas, King Neptune. King Neptune is a character who's been around since the beginning of the sea. He's a character who the Bikini Bottom citizens view as their god, and he's a character who has the ability to change fish into other forms.
What the?
Oops.
King Neptune used his magic to turn the fish of the sea into more evolved subjects for him to rule over. He's the one who's been behind it all this time. Hey, Alex from the future here. So before I move on, let's talk a little more about the Bikini Atoll theory. A lot of people really wanted this theory to be true, and I get it. This is like the most iconic, classic SpongeBob theory. And the comment I got the most on this theory was the idea that the prehistoric Bikini Bottom that disproves the Bikini Atoll theory doesn't actually take place millions of years ago. It's actually the fallout directly after the Bikini Atoll tests when life first started to mutate and evolve in Bikini Bottom. And that's a cool idea, you know, it's a cool way to maybe keep the Bikini Atoll theory. But here's the thing, the narrator actually says it takes place millions of years ago.
It is here that millions of years ago, life began taking its first clumsy steps out of the darkness.
And we see a dinosaur flying above the sea. I'm sorry, this just has to be from the actual prehistoric age millions of years ago. Alright, but here's another comment I got. If this show's all supposed to be a television theory documentary, how were they able to get this footage from millions of years ago? Well, in SB129, Squidward time travels back to the prehistoric age, and obviously the cameraman came with him, otherwise we wouldn't be able to watch the episode. So, unfortunately, no matter how you look at it, there's no way this episode with evolved fish wasn't actually millions of years before the Bikini Atoll tests. I'm sorry guys, the Bikini Atoll theory just can't be true. Or, at least that's what I thought, until I recently rewatched the season 10 episode Lost and Found. This episode takes place entirely beneath the Krusty Krab. And if you remember, beneath the Krusty Krab is where the filmmakers store secret behind-the-scenes stuff like the surveillance room filming the characters, or even props used in the SpongeBob movie. But while SpongeBob is trying to get back upstairs, he passes through this area.
Lost World.
A massive underwater prehistoric area that even has dinosaurs despite it being underwater. The only explanation I can think of for this is, like everything else we see down here, this is a fake set created by the showrunners for an episode of SpongeBob. Meaning, the prehistoric Bikini Bottom episodes we see are most likely faked by the showrunners, and the Bikini Atoll theory could still be true. Also, to further prove this, in a new season 14 episode, Hysterical History, we get another flashback to prehistoric Bikini Bottom, but it's sort of implied to be at the same time as humans existing. So yeah, really seems like the Bikini Atoll theory is plausible now. I still think both theories for why the fish are evolved work pretty well. Neptune's moon actually shows us some direct evidence of fish becoming more or less evolved, but the actual Bikini Atoll test footage being used throughout the show doesn't really feel like a coincidence to me either. Either of them fit the theory, I like them both, you could just choose your favorite. Let's get back to the theory. But now, I have an interesting question for you. What is the relationship between evolved fish and primitive unevolved fish? Well, they probably just peacefully coexist in the sea without bothering each other. You know, just like real-life humans and animals. Wait a second.
The war!
I also have some new thoughts on the war theory, but I'm gonna save them for the next mini-theory. I promise not all these mini-theories are like Mrs. Puff Part 2s, but a lot of them kind of build off of the previous theory. In Season 3, Episode 10, the Krusty Krab training video, there is this hilarious, absurd moment when they're talking about Mr. Krabs.
After the war, Krabs stayed secluded in a deep depression that seemed endless.
Like, what war happened in Bikini Bottom? They just tell us this and then completely drop it. But with this new context, is it possible that Krabs fought in a war against these primitive, wild fish of the sea? I mean, let's remember in Feral Friends, some of those de-evolved fish were massive compared to the evolved fish, and they immediately started attacking each other.
The battle for the survival of the fittest rages on in the animal kingdom.
So yeah, in order for the Bikini Bottom citizens to survive and expand, they would probably break into some kind of war. And from the sounds of it, this war must have been pretty brutal to put Mr. Krabs into such a deep depression. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Is there actually any evidence that proves the war Mr. Krabs fought in was specifically this evolutionary war? Well, through the few flashbacks we get, we know that Mr. Krabs served in the Navy. And yes, they were sailing ships on an ocean, even though they're already underwater. This is actually a real-life phenomenon where certain parts of the sea can have a higher level of salinity, and it looks like an underwater ocean. Shout out Miss Parks, my high school marine biology teacher. We also know from maps of Bikini Bottom that the town is surrounded by this underwater ocean. So that places Mr. Krabs' war outside of Bikini Bottom where this evolutionary war would have to take place. Then if we take a look at Mr. Krabs' home, we see it is full of memorabilia from his past days in the Navy. But hidden within here is something that will absolutely blow your mind and answer one of the biggest questions in the show. Hanging there on his wall is a picture of a massive whale next to a ship. You don't think that could be... No, it can't be. Pearl's mother?
Wait, I want to see it. I want to find it. Hold up. The things that got my eye right now are the fish and this actual person on the wall. There's a whale. Is it the whale?
Hanging there on his wall.
The whale?
A picture of a massive whale next to
the
him.
whale!
You don't think that could be...
Pearl's mom! I got it!
Pearl is Mr. Krabs' whale daughter. The show never really explains how a crab can be the father of a whale, but most people just assume she was adopted. People have been speculating about who Pearl's biological mother is for years, and I think we finally just found our answer. We see 2 photos of this whale on a ship in Season 3, Episode 9, just 1 episode before we find out Mr. Krabs fought in a war. Since this is among all of Mr. Krabs' Navy stuff, I think we can assume that this is something he encountered and not just some random picture of a whale on a ship above the ocean. The whale is massive compared to the ship. We've seen adult whales in Bikini Bottom before, but they are nothing compared to the size of this whale. This has a much closer resemblance to Pearl when she de-evolved in Feral Friends and became massive. So this has to be an unevolved primitive whale, and the picture clearly shows them fighting. Not only does this prove that there was a war between evolved and primitive fish, but Mr. Krabs definitely fought in it. But this also implies something very dark. Mr. Krabs killed Pearl's mother. The only direct reference we get in the show to Pearl's mother is one of Mr. Krabs' many sayings, Mother of Pearl.
Mother of Pearl! Mother of Pearl! Holy Mother of Pearl!
He uses it in place of something like holy crap or dear God, only saying it when something truly shocking or terrible happens, because he knows the terrible thing that happened to Pearl's mother. Why did Mr. Krabs go into such a deep depression after the war? Because he's haunted by what he's done, and the smoking harpoon to prove it is right there on his wall.
And he has the harpoon on his wall, dude!
So, that leaves us with an important question. Why did he adopt Pearl? After he killed her mother, he probably realized she had an infant daughter who had the evolutionary genes. Instead of leaving her to die, he adopted her as his own, all while keeping the dark secret that he was responsible for her mother's death. Okay, whoa. So I obviously just very quickly skimmed over the fact that for some reason Pearl is evolved but Pearl's mother isn't, and I didn't really provide a good explanation for this.
But what if the mom whale was a normal whale and had a whale baby, then why would it have been Pearl? Like, she's the evolved form, right? No, that's convenient. She just happened to be evolved. Okay.
Honestly, at the time, I didn't really have one, but I think I may have a possible explanation now. Whatever caused this evolution, whether it was magic from King Neptune or radiation from nuclear tests, whatever it is, we know it happened only within a specific range. So you could hypothetically have a mother and daughter whale, and only one of them was within range of whatever caused this evolution. It would be nice if there was more evidence in the actual show to explain this, but I think this works as a simple way to explain the logistics of it. Woo! Childhood ruined yet? Well, don't worry, there's still time for this theory to get even worse. Now's your chance to remove yourself before things get really dark.
Stop taking meeting notes and let ClickUp AI Note Taker do it for you. It allows you to focus on your meetings, not your notes. It captures...
Still here? Okay, so here's a fun question. What's the deal with all the pets in Bikini Bottom? How come most fish are basically humans, but a snail or a worm acts like a pet? Well, just like humans have domesticated wild animals, it should be no surprise that evolved fish have domesticated primitive fish as pets. Unlike the massive primitive fish that the Bikini Bottom citizens had to go to war with, there's also smaller primitive fish like jellyfish, snails, spirit worms, seahorses, and clams that the Bikini Bottom citizens were able to form a symbiotic relationship with. Aww, and I thought you said this was gonna be the dark part, Alex. They're living peacefully together. That's nice. Okay, you got me. Here's another fun question. Where do the citizens of Bikini Bottom get their food? I mean, sure, some of it is plant-based, but there sure does seem to be an awful lot of meat-based food under the sea. I think you know where I'm going with this. The Bikini Bottom citizens eat primitive fish. Haha, it's not cannibalism if they're less evolved than you, right? There's no moral dilemma there.
I mean, what the f else are they gonna eat? Sand?
In Season 3, Episode 13, we see direct proof of this when the characters go fishing for primitive clams. This is something completely normal in this world. And then there's the chum bucket, which sells chum. Chum. Chum is literally just ground up fish. The show isn't even hiding this. Now, we don't really see too much of the meat harvesting side of Bikini Bottom, and I'm not surprised they're keeping it on the DL, with the whole cannibalism thing, but there is one secret to making food that is kept more secret than anything in Bikini Bottom. The best kept secret in the entire show. You already know what I'm gonna say. The Krabby Patty secret formula. Throughout the show, there's been lots of contradictory evidence about the Krabby Patty secret formula. In Season 4, Episode 7, Mr. Krabs says it's an old family recipe.
Your mother knows the Krabby Patty formula? Of course she does! It's an old Krabs family recipe!
But in Season 5, Episode 1, apparently Mr. Krabs discovered it on his own by accidentally mixing random ingredients together.
I've done it! I discovered the perfect patty batter!
Sometimes it's a secret formula, sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's a secret sauce, and any glimpse we get at the formula is just random nonsense. There is a ton of contradictory evidence out there, but I think this might all be intentional. In order to throw people off, Mr. Krabs has spread misinformation about the Krabby Patty formula. In fact, he's already done this in Season 3, Episode 18 by hiding a fake formula for Plankton to find that says he's the secret ingredient.
Mixed together with the most important ingredient of all, 4 heaping pounds of freshly ground plankton?
In the contradictions aren't just inside the show. Even one of the SpongeBob crew members once said that Krabby Patties are vegetarian and contain no meat. But I've always been a little suspicious about what the creators say. They've also said that they're not allowed to show fish as food, except they clearly do with chum, clam fishing, and all the many gags where fish turn into food. It's almost like they're not allowed by Nickelodeon to publicly acknowledge this because that could create a controversy, but they could still sneak this dark secret into the show. So what is the true secret ingredient? Where does the meat really come from? It's strange, we never really see Mr. Krabs get the meat delivered, or at least go out himself to get it. It's almost like he has all the meat he needs stockpiled somewhere. What primitive meat can Mr. Krabs have access to? Maybe he's been holding on to something from the war. What could Mr. Krabs have killed during the war that he doesn't want anyone to find out about? Something big enough to supply him with meat for years without needing more. What could that be?
Oh, no. You're not about to tell me.
Wait.
What could that be?
No.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
You really gonna make me say it? Mr. Krabs is using Pearl's dead mother's carcass to make Krabby Patties. Woo! We did it! Yeah, we solved the mystery! We did it!
How could you be celebrating this?
Season 1, Episode 15, Sleepy Time. Mr. Krabs has a dream that he's on a boat fishing for a massive dollar. This is his memory of killing Pearl's mother, except now all he sees her as is money. And take a guess what name he calls the dollar.
What you doing, Mr. Krabs?
I'm picking Neptune's bucket.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about cold hard flipping cash. It's the mighty Moby Dollar.
Moby Dollar. A direct reference to Moby Dick, a story about hunting a whale. Are you kidding me? And that is the evolution theory. Eugene Krabs' aspirations for money and greed have caused him to do terrible things. At least his love for Pearl seems to be real, so maybe there's some small amount of good in him. And even though Pearl's mother probably provides tons of meat, eventually he's gonna run out and he'll have to face what he's done. Well, unless of course there's another whale he has access to. Nope. No. No. Mr. Krabs wouldn't do that. He loves Pearl. He's not just raising her for Krabby Patty meat. Even Mr. Krabs isn't that much of a monster.
From every side I've ever seen to the sweetest sound I've heard, I'd gladly give up everything for all the money that I've earned.
Huh.
Baby, you got something in your nose. No! Feel the hole. Hope you find peace for yourself. New boyfriend ain't gon' fill the void.
Well, alrighty then, that's the end of that theory. Just gonna end it here before there's any more dark plot twists. Okay, so a lot of people had issues with the Pearl's mother Krabby Patty theory. Specifically, the realism and logic behind how just one whale could create enough Krabby Patty meat for so many years. But listen, I don't make these theories using real-world logic. I try and use the show's own internal logic. But if you want to bring real-world logic into this and argue about how long whale meat would last, I think the real world actually supports my theory. When a whale dies in the real-world ocean, it has a very profound effect on the environment. Entire marine ecosystems will form around a decomposing whale corpse, and scavengers can feed off of it for up to 50 years. This is a phenomenon called whale fall. And this explains why total chaos breaks out whenever Bikini Bottom runs out of Krabby Patties.
The Krabby Patty is what ties us all together. Without it, there will be a complete breakdown of social order.
Aren't you overreacting a bit?
Welcome to the apocalypse, Mr. Squidward.
Just like a real whale fall, the ecosystem of Bikini Bottom is completely dependent on it. Also, another YouTuber, Athena P, pointed out to me that there's this moment in a newer episode of the Patrick Star Show.
This episode addresses Alex Bale's Krabby Patties are made from Pearl's mother theory pretty directly.
I'm Eugene Krabs. Krabby Patties are made with whale oil.
You leave my daughter out of this.
So that's something. I mean, take that as you will. So yeah, I still think the Pearl's mother Krabby Patty theory is solid. It's at least better than that crab meat theory that people won't stop commenting about. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna quickly debunk that theory, because I know people are still gonna comment about it on this video. Here's an extra bonus mini theory, just because this theory annoys me so much.
That's what I taste
Two
like.
ants.
So, a lot of people think that Krabby Patties are actually made of crab meat, and Mr. Krabs is going around killing all the crabs in Bikini Bottom. This is the comment I will get for the rest of my life.
It's crab meat.
Actual crab? I mean, why else would Mr. Krabs be the only crab in Bikini Bottom? Except for his mom, and his dad, and his nephews. Okay, but there's no crabs outside of his family, except for this guy, and this doctor, and this kid, and these two crabs, and this circus guy. But besides them, there's no crabs in Bikini Bottom. Okay, even if there is not, like, a lot of crabs, there's equally not a lot of sponges, or starfish, or pufferfish, or squirrels in Bikini Bottom. Bikini Bottom is like 90% generic fish. But then why is it named the Krusty Krab? Cause the owner's a crab, and that's his last name. But even if we ignore that, it's like, why would Mr. Krabs advertise his dark secret as the name of his restaurant? But then why is the Krusty Krab shaped like a crab trap? Okay, this is actually the one good piece of evidence in this theory. I think it's a little ambiguous whether it's supposed to be a crab trap or a lobster trap, so I did some digging, and Patchy actually calls it a lobster trap in a SpongeBob DVD bonus.
The Krusty Krab looks like a New England-style lobster trap, but now it just traps the pocket change of Bikini Bottom's hungry denizens.
They also find a very similar looking building in Camp Coral and call it a lobster trap.
Oh no! We've walked into a real life lobster trap!
I could maybe see this evidence kind of working, but you'd kind of expect if this was their secret intention, they would like call it a crab trap, you know? But what about the scene where Mr. Krab eats one and he says that it tastes like him?
So that's what I taste like.
This is supposed to be the smoking gun piece of evidence that's all over TikTok, but nobody actually shows the clip with context.
Mommy, my Krabby Patty tastes funny.
Well, no wonder. It's all old and dried out, like that man right there. Now put that thing where it belongs, in the garbage.
La 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 la.
Well, little Patty, we're two of a kind. We've both lost our luster.
So that's what I taste like.
Mr. Krabs says the patty tastes like him because the lady called the patty old and dry like him. And he's been feeling insecure about his age in this episode. Like, I'm not saying the Pearl's mom theory is the best theory ever, but it's better than this shit. Come on. Alright, the evolution theory. I know I like to call each of my theories the darkest theory I've ever made, but like, this is the actual darkest one. We all know it. This is some sick, twisted shit. I think this theory has its flaws and relies on a couple big assumptions, but at the end of the day, it's still just so entertaining and interesting to me that I'd probably still put it right in the middle at 4th place, even after all the corrections and alternative ideas. This next mini theory is also kind of an extension to the evolution theory, but it's also a really interesting brand new theory about the history of Bikini Bottom and the true purpose of this show. Let's get into it. So, if there's one thing I'd probably change about my evolution theory, it would be the second part about the war.
After the war, Krabs stayed secluded in a deep depression that seemed endless.
I think there definitely was a war in Bikini Bottom, but I don't think it was between evolved and primitive fish anymore. There is just way more evidence that the war Mr. Krabs fought in was actually a war between fish and humans. And I think this concept for a human war war has been secretly present in the show from the very start. Every single building in Bikini Bottom is made out of some sort of debris from the human world. Now, this is a reference to how marine ecosystems in real life often form around things that fell from the surface. But the debris isn't always just random objects or pollution. A surprising amount of the buildings feel like they're from the aftermath of a massive war. There are a ton of buildings made out of sunken ships, but there's also anchors, submarines, lobster traps, bait and tackle boxes, undersea mines. There's even a building made out of a dead bucket of fish. If you really look at the show's aesthetic, it gives the impression that Bikini Bottom is an Adventure Time style post-apocalyptic wasteland where a massive war between humans and fish took place. Mr. Krabs Navy Convention Center is literally a giant torpedo. We get further confirmation of this as early as season 1 Hooky, when a bunch of humans start fishing in Bikini Bottom. Pay close attention to how Mr. Krabs reacts.
They're back! They're back, I tell you! I saw them with my own eyes!
They're back. Mr. Krabs has dealt with this before, probably because these were the same hooks from the war he fought in. From humans' perspective, they're just fishing, but for the citizens of Bikini Bottom, this was a brutal war. And listen to what he says about what happens if the hooks catch you.
They cook you, and then they eat you, or worse.
What could be worse than that?
Gift shops.
You'll end up in gift shops. This gives a whole new context to the Shell City gift shop we see in the SpongeBob movie.
Wait a second. Those fish are dead.
All these dead fish are victims from the human war. Look, the gift shop in Hooky even has a very similar sign to the Shell City gift shop. Among the dead fish in Shell City, we specifically see the same type of royal seahorses King Neptune uses, which makes sense because as King of the Sea, he would probably be the one commanding the army to go fight the humans. Movie Neptune even talks about Shell City like he has personal experience with it.
My crown is in the forbidden Shell City! No one who's gone to Shell City has ever returned!
I guess this could also mean Mr. Puff was a victim of the war, but I kinda prefer the idea from my new Mrs. Puff mini theory. We also see giant hooks all over Mr. Krabs' wall of memorabilia, along with other human fishing tools. There's even a picture of the Bikini Bottom museum ship before it was sunk in the war and later turned into a museum. There's also this picture of a human pirate. And before you say anything, no, this is not Patchy. It's probably just someone he fought in the war. Listen, I still definitely think these pictures could be Pearl's mother, and she's still the source of the Krabby Patty meat, but instead of Mr. Krabs killing her, she was probably just a casualty of the human war, and Mr. Krabs just found her dead body and adopted her orphan daughter. There's also the Hook Museum, which with this context looks much more just like a straight up war museum. Now, these are smaller hooks, so I initially thought maybe this was just a museum of hooks made by evolved fish to catch primitive fish like clams, but listen closely to the audio Mr. Krabs is listening to.
The three-pronged jig hook was first sighted in local waters more than 100 years ago.
The hook was first sighted in local waters more than 100 years ago. This is definitely a museum of human hooks, and we now know this war has been going on for at least 100 years. There's also tons of movies and TV shows in Bikini Bottom based around the horrors of hooks.
Tonight's frightening feature.
The idea of this human war is everywhere in the show, and it's played a big role in shaping the culture of Bikini Bottom. But here's the strange thing about all of this. The Bikini Bottom we see today is not at war. The only time we see humans fishing in Bikini Bottom is in this one single episode, and Mr. Krabs even says they're back.
They're back!
As if this is not a normal occurrence. This implies that the humans previously stopped attacking for some reason. So what ended this great human war that lasted for at least 100 years? Well, clearly humans and fish have a much more peaceful relationship now. The entire SpongeBob SquarePants show is made by humans with the help of certain fish, including Mr. Krabs, who used to fight against them. What if the reason why the war ended was because of this show? The original human research team that was mentioned in the SpongeBob Pitch Bible showed the world that Bikini Bottom had extremely intelligent life and proved that instead of killing the fish, they could peacefully profit off of them by making their lives into a TV show. SpongeBob doesn't even know it, but I think he might be the reason why a 100-year-long brutal war between humans and fish has come to a peaceful end. And that is the human war theory.
Some people spend hours digging through competitors' websites. You don't have to. Use SEMrush to instantly see where competitors get their traffic.
So, the continuity with King Neptune is a bit of a mess. There are 2 different King Neptunes. There's a King Poseidon. There's 3 different royal palaces. 2 of them are called the City of Atlantis, but there's also a 3rd unrelated City of Atlantis. It's confusing to say the least. But there is actually a way to explain how all of this is intentional and connects together. This is a story of power, deception, and betrayal. This is the Neptune Theory. King Neptune is the ruler of the 7 seas and the Roman god of the ocean. If you watch my evolution theory, you know there's also a good chance he's the reason why fish in Bikini Bottom are so evolved and able to talk. He lives in the city of Atlantis with his wife Queen Amphitrite and his son Triton, but in the first SpongeBob movie, he's replaced by a completely different King Neptune who has a completely different daughter named Mindy. These guys don't look or sound at all the same, so how can they both exist in this universe? Well, there's already an interesting theory out there about this. It's widely believed that the SpongeBob movie takes place in the future after the events of the show. So widely believed that I got hundreds of comments about it in my Mrs. Puff theory. Yep, I know guys, I heard what you said. The creator of SpongeBob, Steven Hillenburg, said he wanted to end the series with the movie, and it being canonically at the end of the SpongeBob timeline would explain why we never see the Krusty Krab 2, or any of the other characters from the movie in the later SpongeBob episodes. And some people believe that the reason why movie Neptune is so different is because he's actually Neptune's son, Triton, all grown up. And that's a pretty cool theory, but I don't buy it. Other than Triton looking nothing like movie Neptune, I've never actually believed that the SpongeBob movie takes place in the future. Despite there being many people who commented about it on my Mrs. Puff theory as if it was a proven fact, there's never actually been any official confirmation of it. Steven Hillenburg only said that he wanted to stop making SpongeBob after the movie. He never said anything about where the movie actually takes place in the timeline of the show. And we do actually briefly see Neptune's daughter Mindy show up later in the show in SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout. There's no way she'd be there unless the show took place after the events of the movie. You know, I still get this comment to this day, like people really think this is like an indisputable proven fact. I do have some really interesting new evidence about the movie being fake and when it takes place in the timeline, but it's just too complicated to bring up here, so I'm gonna save it for the mini theory. I think what's actually going on here with Neptune is something much more interesting, and it ties directly in with the television theory. If you haven't seen that video, it basically proves that the entire show, SpongeBob SquarePants, is actually a nature documentary being filmed by scuba divers, and many of the elements we see throughout the series are secretly set up by the showrunners to make sure that the show is more entertaining and profitable. And this applies to the SpongeBob movie as well. There's promotional art and even a commercial that acknowledges the fact that it's just a movie being filmed.
Hello? SpongeBob, what kind of jellyfish is that?
Hey guys, it's Carlos from The Zone. Can you tell us about your latest adventure?
Well, this one adventure we had was a real Lulu.
You mean when we went after Neptune's crown? It seemed bigger than our usual adventures.
Yes, and with fewer interruptions.
Well, thanks guys. We'll see you in the movie.
Movie? What's that?
I don't know.
I think the real reason why Neptune looks so different in the movie is because the filmmakers couldn't get the real King Neptune, the literal god of the sea, to show up for a movie. So they hired an actor to pretend to be the king. And there is actually a ton of evidence in the show to support this. King Neptune is supposed to live in the great city of Atlantis, but in the movie he just lives in some random sandcastle, almost like they just built a discount version for the movie. But the real evidence comes from season 10, episode 18, Lost and Found, where SpongeBob SpongeBob goes beneath the Krusty Krab to look for something in the Lost and Found. As he searches through the surprisingly massive collection of items, on one of the shelves, we see something mind-blowing. The crown worn by King Neptune in the SpongeBob movie. The entire plot of the movie hinges on the fact that Neptune thinks Mr. Krabs stole his crown. Why would Mr. Krabs have this now? Because this isn't just the Krusty Krabs Lost and Found. It's also where they store the props used by the SpongeBob SquarePants filmmakers to create the SpongeBob movie. If you remember from my television theory, Mr. Krabs is secretly working for the showrunners to spy on all the main characters. And his secret surveillance room was hidden beneath the Krusty Krab, just like this Lost and Found. So it makes perfect sense for the showrunners to hide their props down here. And if you still don't believe me, we also see SpongeBob's guitar, the Goofy Goober peanut hats, and the magical bag of wind. All items from the movie that would make no sense being down here unless this was the showrunner's prop storage, and the movie King Neptune was just an actor. Well, that's one Neptune down. Now for the real mystery, King Poseidon. In the third SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, the King of the Sea is yet again replaced by a new character, King Poseidon, the Greek god of the ocean. He actually does live in the city of Atlantis, except instead of the ancient royal architecture, it's a giant casino designed to make money. It'd be easy to say that these are just two separate kings that rule different areas of the sea, but they both claim to be the ruler of the seven seas. Alright, I don't have too much to add to this theory, but I just want to mention that I do know that in mythology, Neptune and Poseidon are the same person, just with different names. But my point is, in SpongeBob, they are clearly supposed to be two completely different people. That's kind of the whole point of this theory. So how can two different characters both be the king of the same seven seas? The answer to that question actually has to do with a place called Camp Coral. Throughout the third SpongeBob movie, we keep cutting back to flashbacks of a younger SpongeBob and all the other characters when they all went to summer camp together. This was all to set up a spin-off show called Camp Coral that followed these younger characters. Now at first, I just wrote the show off as SpongeBob following the trend of making all their characters younger to appeal to a younger demographic. It's been done before and it's never very good. They also completely contradict the continuity of the main show by having characters like Sandy and SpongeBob meet as kids when we know they actually met as adults in the main show. Look, I am having a hard enough time figuring out this show's continuity on its own. I do not need another show full of contradictions to make it even harder. But the creators actually did something very clever to make the continuity work. The 7th episode of Camp Coral ends with one of the biggest plot twists I've ever seen from the show. So in this episode, SpongeBob actually discovers the Krabby Patty secret formula way before it was supposed to be created by Mr. Krabs. But at the end of the episode, it gets accidentally destroyed by Sandy, and then we get this mind-blowing scene.
This is Little Cheeks calling Big Cheeks. This is Big Cheeks receiving you from the future. Your plan worked perfectly. The formula burned out before Mr. Plankton could nab it. I knew sending you to Camp Coral was the right thing to do. Bye, feature me. Mission accomplished, timeline preserved.
So Sandy used time travel to send her past self to Camp Coral so that she could make sure the Krabby Patty formula didn't get discovered before it was supposed to. They actually figured out a way to make this messed up continuity make sense. Don't you dare tell me this show doesn't care about its continuity. Can I also just say that this scene lines up perfectly with my television theory? A major part of that theory is that Sandy is actually a spy working for the showrunners and is secretly making sure everything stays on track. And then what do we see a month after I post my theory? Sandy secretly manipulating everyone to keep the show on track. Just gonna give myself a little pat on the back there.
He's enjoying himself. I love that.
But enough gloating. What does any of this have to do with King Poseidon? Well, this proves that Camp Coral and the movie that sets it up are in an alternate timeline. The events that have taken place in the show are not the same events in this movie. The continuity errors like Sandy and SpongeBob meeting, or Poseidon being the king of the sea instead of Neptune, can be explained by this shift in the timeline. So there you go. King Poseidon and King Neptune are from completely separate timelines. That's why we never see any reference to King Poseidon in the show. And that is the Neptune theory. Huh, I mean that wasn't so hard. I guess I'm done here.
Neptune stirred up quite a gale tonight. He must be mad about something.
That's silly. Everyone knows Poseidon is ruler of the undersea. Everyone knows Poseidon is ruler of the undersea.
They're in the same timeline.
Why can't anything ever be easy? This is the clip that really made me decide to make this theory. The beginning of Season 5, Episode 19, Spongehenge, shows two fish arguing over whether Neptune or Poseidon is the real ruler of the sea. It's like the creators are directly telling us that both of these characters somehow exist in the same timeline, and it's our job to figure out how the puzzle pieces fit together. So, let's take a look. Despite both of these characters having similar appearances and personalities, there is one very important difference between them. Poseidon doesn't have powers. We've seen many times that King Neptune has magical abilities that he can use at any time, even without his trident. But in the entire third SpongeBob movie, we never see Poseidon use any powers or magical abilities, except for lighting up his trident, but all he has to do for that is just flip a switch. And we know from the episode Trident Trouble that you don't even need to be a god to use the trident. And at the end of the third movie, we find out Poseidon is actually in terrible shape. If you remember at the end of the episode Neptune's Spatula, Neptune briefly turned SpongeBob into a god, and we can see that having god powers gives you a perfect body. So why is Poseidon in such terrible shape? Because he doesn't actually have powers, only Neptune does. Even Neptune's wife, Queen Amphitrite, has to use technology to zap someone, unlike Neptune, who only has to use his finger in the exact same episode. He is clearly the only one with powers, but why? To answer this question, we first have to understand the origins of King Neptune. Now, throughout the show, there is very little information on Neptune's past. I read the Wikipedia, I looked through the comic books, the video games, but I just couldn't find anything that would help me. But then I remembered there are SpongeBob shorts, which are like mini episodes that only air once, usually to promote something. So I started looking to see if there were any that could help us, and lo and behold, there is a SpongeBob short called The Story of King Neptune. Huh. Yeah, I guess that could be helpful. This short is about SpongeBob telling Patrick the origins of King Neptune, but it's not entirely clear whether it's true.
The story of King Neptune. When King Neptune was a little Neptune, his mother set him adrift in a river. As he floated along, a radioactive meteor fell to Earth. An alien appeared and anointed the infant with super Neptune fluid.
Also, maybe the green radioactive meteor in SpongeBob's story is a reference to Neptune's moon, which also kind of gives off a green radioactive vibe.
Is that really the origin of King Neptune?
Sure.
So King Neptune was abandoned as a baby and then given his powers by aliens. But SpongeBob is holding an upside-down comic book, so it feels a lot like something he just made up. And SpongeBob is not the most reliable narrator. Unless there's something in the story that we can definitively prove, I don't think we can use it for a theory. Like, do you really expect me to believe that Neptune got his powers from aliens? I mean, we've never even seen aliens in the show before. Except, we have. And they just so happen to also live in a city called Atlantis. Season 5, Episode 12, Atlantis Squarepantis, we see another completely different Atlantis, the lost city of Atlantis, a city that's home to a race of aliens. The Atlantean aliens traveled billions of light years to come to this planet and build their city.
For reasons unknown, this great city disappeared one day, but no ruins were ever found. All the inventions you take for granted were given to us by the Atlanteans.
They were a peaceful race of aliens who shared their technology, but then mysteriously disappeared for some reason. And take a guess what we find when we look inside of that city. A massive sculpture of King Neptune. That story about aliens giving Neptune his powers doesn't sound so far-fetched now, does it? And that's not all we find.
Neptune's Ascension, the only surviving painting from the great lost city of Atlantis.
A painting created by the Atlanteans called Neptune's Ascension, aka Neptune ascending to his god status by being given powers by the Atlantean aliens. The story is definitely referencing this. There are too many connections for this to be a coincidence. So even though it's being told by SpongeBob and details like the aliens' appearance are wrong, the story itself is probably based on truth. And there's also a lot of evidence to support the idea that Neptune was abandoned as a baby. In Clash of Triton, Neptune is watching a soap opera in his bedroom and gets upset when his wife turns it off.
Oh, Neptune, surely this isn't the behavior befitting a king, doing nothing but watching daytime television.
Wait! Rochelle was just about to meet her biological parents.
In the soap opera, Rochelle was just about to meet her biological parents. Maybe the real reason why Neptune's so invested in the soap opera is because he's never met his biological parents either. There's even tissues on the table next to him as if he's been crying. So I was watching a new season 14 episode, and we briefly see this random lady living alone in a rundown cabin in the woods. And I think she might actually be be Neptune's mom. Obviously, she's not a royal mermaid like from the story, but we don't know how much we can trust the visuals of that story. She's got the same skin and hair color, but the main thing that caught my eye was this photo of Neptune on her wall. I don't know, obviously there's not really much evidence here. I just thought it was kind of interesting and might be worth bringing up. And the idea that Neptune was abandoned as a baby works perfectly with the mythology in the show. Neptune is the Roman god of the sea, but he is the only reference to Roman mythology in the show. Everything else we see is from Greek mythology. In the episode Trident Trouble, we see a Greek chorus.
Behold, we're the Greek chorus. We narrate this epic tale.
Neptune once mentioned Zeus, the Greek god of thunder.
So I say, look, Zeus, either you come up with more money, or Neptune walks.
He also mentions Apollo, the Greek god of the sun.
Now behold, my beloved home of Atlantis. A prize worthy of Apollo.
I guess Apollo is both a Roman and a Greek god. Sorry about that, Apollo fans, that's my bad. Even in the city of Atlantis where Neptune lives, there's a building named the Poseidon, clearly named after Poseidon. So Neptune is clearly the outsider here, which is why he was abandoned as a baby. But if the sea is actually ruled by Greek mythology, then Poseidon should be the true heir to the throne. Why is Neptune the king in the show? Because after Neptune was given his god powers by aliens, he returned to Atlantis and stole the throne from Poseidon. This would explain why there's so much confusion over who the real king is.
Neptune stirred up quite a gale tonight.
Everyone knows Poseidon is ruler of the undersea.
Legally, Poseidon should be the king, but Neptune took it by force. And that's not all he took from Poseidon. Neptune's wife, Queen Amphitrite, is the goddess of the sea. The Greek goddess of the sea, aka the wife of Poseidon. God damn, Neptune stole his wife and his throne. That is cold. God damn, Neptune stole his wife and his throne.
It's Mr. Stereo Girl!
The Greek goddess of the sea, aka the wife of Poseidon.
No!
Damn. Okay, gonna interrupt here. So, some people have pointed out that the show's King Neptune is referred to as Neptune the 14th in Season 4's Krusty Towers.
This room is hideous. Redesign it. Neptune the 14th will be nice.
What?
And yeah, that does kind of feel like it contradicts my theory a bit, but I don't know, I still think it could work. Like, he could be from a long line of Neptunes, but also could have been abandoned by his mother for whatever reason. The two aren't mutually exclusive. Maybe his Roman parents were trying to protect him somehow from the Greek gods in charge of the sea. I don't know, this theory is already full of enough random speculation. I don't really want to add anymore. And eventually, everyone did recognize Neptune as the rightful king. The pink fish who seemed adamant about Poseidon being the king completely changes her mind one season later in Clash of Triton.
Oh, wait a minute, King Neptune is coming here? Oh, I'm a huge fan of the royal family. I just love everything they do.
And that is the real story of King Neptune. The reason why Poseidon is king in the third movie is probably because in that timeline, Neptune was never given his god powers, so he never stole the throne from Poseidon. Although, seeing as how Poseidon turned Atlantis into a big casino cash grab city, maybe it's a good thing Neptune took over.
The lost city of Atlantic City.
And that is the Neptune theory. That was a tough one, but we are finally done. See you next time, guys. Wait, why is Poseidon City called the Lost City of Atlantic City?
The lost city of Atlantic City.
I mean, the Atlantic City Park makes sense. That's a reference to the real-life Atlantic City, but why is it called the Lost City? There is nothing lost about the city. It seems like everyone's easily able to find it. The only other reference to a lost city of Atlantis is the one with the aliens that gave Neptune his powers. Nope, I don't care. I'm done with this theory. I don't need to answer every single little question. I am 100% done. Fine, okay? One more quick part just to tie up all the loose ends, and then I am done. Alright, here we go. So we know before the Atlantean aliens mysteriously disappeared, they shared their technology with the creatures of the sea. I think the self-proclaimed gods of the sea got their technology, like tridents and their other weapons, from the Atlantean aliens. In fact, the Atlantean guards even use golden tridents as their weapons. That's why the gods named their city Atlantis, to pay tribute to the Atlanteans that gave them their technology. But all of that changed when Poseidon became king of the sea. sea. He betrayed the Atlanteans and used their own weapons against them to conquer their home and turn it into a casino city. That's why Poseidon City is called the Lost City, even though it's not lost. It's referencing the Atlantean city that was conquered by Poseidon. And the reason why the Atlanteans gave god powers to some random abandoned baby in the main timeline was so that Neptune could take the throne from Poseidon and prevent him from conquering the alien city. And the reason why the Atlantean city mysteriously disappeared was because they hid it so no one could ever try and conquer them again. And that is the Neptune theory. I am done.
Hey Vicky, let's test Vanish's new improved formula against the toughest hot to root stairs.
You guys were so amazing. This is very
Yo. Okay, let's see how many ads so far. $16 ads. 16 ads in 2 hours and 27 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna make a part 2. We'll continue. Yeah, but this is awesome. Yeah. Okay. I am out.